He was banished from the heroes' party because they thought he was too weak, but he proves himself as the strongest knight. Gideon was the brother of the hero named Rudy, but her most trusted advisor, Ares, thought he wasn't good enough without his legendary sword. He isn't able to break through an ordinary barrier with just a regular sword, so Ares calls him useless, banishing him from the party, and he ends up changing his name to Red. After some time, we see him foraging in the woods, and he looks down to appreciate the view of the borderland region of Zoltan. We learn that the nation is bordered by the wall at the world's end to the north and east, while the rest is surrounded by marshland, making the nation difficult to access with no strategic value. This has slowed Zoltan's development, and only fugitives and hermits visit it, but Red thinks that it's perfect for him. He sells the herbs at the Adventurers Guild, where we meet the girl Megria, who buys it for 130 perils, as other adventurers in the guild ask him why he doesn't replace his bronze sword, thinking it's too weak. Red shares his dream to open an apothecary, saying he prefers the slow life. As he leaves, he meets the boy Tanta, who reveals that he's going to deliver lunch to his father. He tells Red that he will grow up to be a carpenter, so he can make a shop for him, even though he doesn't know what blessing he has. He inquires about Red's blessing, but Red brushes off his question, reminding him that he needs to deliver lunch to his father, so he takes his leave. We learn about divine blessings, which are powers granted as skills to people based on their class. Red's blessing is called Guide, and it doesn't have an innate skill, but it gives him access to common skills, including the survival skill, which prevents him from getting lost and helps him find medicinal herbs. He narrowly escapes an encounter with an owlbear, and he returns to the village, where he finds the people from the guild waiting for him. They tell him about the owlbear in the woods, and we learn that he's a D-ranked adventurer, when the adventurer Albert asks him to help guide them through the mountains so that they can defeat the owlbear. Red refuses to help them, saying he doesn't care about ranking up, so Albert leaves, while Megria tells Red to drop the herbs off at the guild. Red counts his money, realizing that it will take him half a year to save up enough to open his apothecary. He hears a knock on his door, and sees that it's Tanta's uncle, Gons, who tells him that Tanta has a serious illness called white eye. Red goes to check up on him, and he confirms the illness, saying it will put Tanta at risk of going blind in 24 hours, so they need to find medicine to treat him. Gons asks Red to help him, offering a reward, but Red notes that the mountains are off limits while the adventurers are there, and he would get kicked out of the guild if he's caught. But he tells Gons that he will help as a friend, telling him to keep it a secret from the guild. Red makes his way to the mountains, trying to avoid Albert's party, but he discovers that they used fire magic to fight the owlbear, and he's afraid that the herbs will perish. So he rushes to collect them, but he's confronted by the owlbear, realizing that it was able to escape from Albert's party. He dodges its attack, slashing it with his sword, and fleeing the scene. Albert eventually discovers the body of the monster, and notices the slash on its chest, realizing that it was attacked with a blunt weapon. Red delivers the herbs to Gons, and they cure Tanta's illness, so everyone thanks him. The doctor tells him that his apothecary will be beneficial to Zoltan, saying he will have plenty of orders for him once he opens it. Gons follows him outside, and Red asks for the reward he offered. After some time, we see an adventurer named Ritz, who is visiting the guild to fill in a job completion report. Megria tells her about the opening of Red's apothecary, and she takes an interest in him. We learn that Gons built the apothecary for Red, as a reward for saving Tanta. During the grand opening, Red overhears other adventurers talking about Rudy's recent victory against the Demon Lord's forces, and Red thinks his exit from the party was for the best. Gons asks him if he has any big dreams, so Red tells everyone that he has accomplished his dream by opening his shop, and that he wishes to enjoy his life. One day, we see Red wondering why he has no customers, thinking it's because of the bad weather, but Ritz enters his shop, recognizing him as Gideon, and they have tea together. We learn that Ritz is the second princess of the Duchy of Logurvia, and Red wonders why she left her princess duties. So she explains that she didn't want to get involved in politics because it was tearing her family apart. She wonders what he's doing in Zoltan, noting that his new name, Red, sounds similar to Ritz. So he admits that he took it off of her name, and she's flattered to hear this. After Red tells her how he was kicked out of the party, Ritz becomes angry, thinking it's unacceptable, because she knows that he tried his best to help the party. She asks him if Rudy and the others were okay with it, and he tells her that they seem to be doing good without him, because they appear to be winning the war. He brings Ritz a cup of tea, and she's impressed, saying it tastes better because he made it for her. In a flashback, we see Red's party in a bar as they notice an old man harassing a hooded woman. She throws him to the ground, scaring him away, and we see that it's Ritz. She tells the hero's party that she doesn't need their help, saying she's the princess of Logurvia, and she takes her leave. Back in the present, Red tells Ritz that she wasn't honest with her feelings, but she claims that she could also be honest, and they reminisce about their time in the mountains when they were gathering information. She tells him that she discovered strange tracks leading to a cabin, so they discuss what it might mean, thinking the Demon Lord's army has a hand in it. Red suggests working together, but Ritz refuses, saying Logurvia fights its battles and wins every time without the hero's help. He respects her decision, offering her cookies, and she tastes it, saying it tastes great. Ritz argues that she was being honest when she said the cookies were delicious, but Red thinks that she wasn't truly honest with her feelings until they faced the demon Shin. In another flashback, we see Logurvia's officials discussing the situation with the hero's party as an official urges them to retaliate against the demon army before they run out of food and fuel. Ritz interjects, noting that the demon army is in the same boat, and suggests striking the fortress where they store their food. Ritz's master agrees, and assigns the hero's party to defend the castle while they take on the army. We learn that Shin was disguised as her master the whole time, and he defeats her, but Red comes to her rescue, after suspecting that there was something off about the master. He helps her hold off against Shin until Rudy arrives, slicing off his arms, and stabbing him through the chest. Ritz is traumatized by the experience, and she stays out of war councils for several days, so Red checks up on her. She reveals that she's afraid of losing another person and failing her people as she grieves for her master and the fallen soldiers. Red tells her to stay strong because she's the captain of the Royal Guard, encouraging her to join their quest because the war can only be won if Logurvia has the will to fight. We learn that Red helped Ritz recover, and they were able to vanquish the Demon Lord's army. Ritz asks Red to let her work at his apothecary, and he tries to refuse, but she says she can handle the store while he's away, so he reluctantly agrees. She asks him if he has original concoctions that will make his apothecary popular, so he shows her a potion that can increase the volume of other potions. But she explains how a potion like that would crash market prices, noting how he doesn't know everything. He tells her about another potion, which is a less addictive painkiller, but she tells him that he will require the Zoltan Council's approval before he sells it. He realizes that her knowledge would be helpful for his business, so he asks her to stop by his shop whenever she has the time, but she tells him that they will never be apart. They enjoy dinner together, as Ritz tells Red that she will buy a bathtub and a bed, telling him that she's going to move in, and this leaves him in shock. Meanwhile, Ares introduces the assassin Tisei to the hero's party, as he explains that she's a talented assassin and will make a good replacement for Gideon. Rudy tells Tisei that she will be under her command, informing Tisei about their mission to hunt for a weapon, which the previous Demon Lord left behind. Red and Ritz have breakfast together, and discuss their work for the day, planning to get the medicine approved. Ritz suggests a reasonable salary for her services, and Red agrees to her suggestion. They head to a furniture store owned by a goblin called Stormy, who asks Ritz why she's with Red. So she tells him that she's moving in with Red, causing him to become surprised, and he congratulates Red, thinking they're in a relationship. Red asks Stormy why he's being so nice to her, so Stormy tells him that it's because, unlike him, she's a customer who pays the full price. Ritz buys the bed, and asks to have it delivered to the shop, as they head over to their next destination. Ritz mentions how Stormy's shop always has good items, and Red explains that it's because he has leveled up his craftsman blessing. We learn that blessings are granted by the almighty Demis, given randomly regardless of a person's status, and the only way to level up a blessing is to kill another person who also has a blessing, turning the world into a violent place. Red notices Tana being bullied by another kid, so he interrupts the fight. The bully throws a rock at him, but he deflects it, telling the bully to use his skills to fight monsters. The kid runs away, and Red goes to check up on Tana's injuries. Tanta introduces Red to his friend named Al, who Red notices is also injured. Ritz arrives, and Tanta is surprised to see her with Red, so she tells him they are good friends, and that she started living with him, which Tana finds even more surprising. Red asks Tana why he was fighting with the older kid, so he tells Red that the bully, Adam, started the fight. Al tells them that Adam wasn't always violent, but he has become hot-headed lately, and Red thinks that it's because he just discovered his blessing. Red explains that blessings affect someone's personality, and Adam has the bar brawler blessing, which focuses on fighting with whatever's at hand. Red adds that Adam has a high affinity for his blessing, making him a natural-born brawler, and Red reveals that certain blessings steer people to do bad things, which explains why Adam is instinctively using makeshift weapons. Al is terrified after hearing this, saying he doesn't want a blessing. Red asks him about it, so he reveals that he's a weapons master, which makes him skilled at mastering weapons. Al is afraid that he will turn out like Adam, so Ritz and Red comfort him, telling him that while a blessing will determine what kind of life he will lead, it's only a part of him and doesn't change who he is as a person. Red assures him that he can learn to control his blessing and use it to overcome his fears. Ritz and Red head off to get their new medicine approved, and Red tells her that once they change the shop's name, he won't let her off easily, so she teases him, wondering if he wants her to stay with him forever. At the office, their proposal is instantly rejected by an official named Dan, who kicks them out of the room. So Ritz goes to another official, who tells her that they've come at a bad time, since a remedy that they approved a month ago is being misused as an illegal narcotic. He tells them that this ordeal has put a lot of stress on Dan, who has been left to deal with the angry townsfolk. The man tells Ritz that he'll personally approve their remedy, knowing she can be trusted. Red apologizes to Ritz for making her do all the hard work for him, but she explains that she's happy to help him. They return home and discuss ways to make the apothecary more popular. Ritz suggests that Red should come up with a hit remedy, which customers will want to buy at all costs. She enjoys his cooking and tells him to serve food with his concoctions, which gives him an idea. He uses his skills to mix remedies with food items to make them more delicious, and the experiment is a success. Ritz gets to work, handing out samples to the villagers, and it attracts more customers to Red's shop. We see a woman buying medicinal cookies for her daughter, and Red's apothecary finally takes off. We cut to the hero's party, where we see the fighter named Danon arguing with Ares over his poor decisions, which have stalled their progress in finding the weapon. Danon thinks that banishing Gideon was a mistake, since they never had issues while he was their guide. Danon asks for Rudy's permission to search for him, and she allows it, telling Danon to look for him. Danon talks to the cleric Theodora about their suspicions regarding Ares, and how their friend Yara left the party because of his decision to banish Gideon. Danon says that even though he criticized Gideon for his mistakes, he never thought of him as a liability, and is determined to find him. Red thinks about how he never imagined that he'd be working at an apothecary with a princess, and they go back inside, as a group of adventurers enter the shop, surprised to see that Ritz is working there. She tells them that she has quit adventuring and moved in with Red, which surprises them even more, and one of them leaves the shop devastated, so they follow her out. Ritz tells Red that she wants to drink mead, and she leaves to buy it, right before Albert visits the shop, wondering if Red killed the owlbear. He denies it, but Albert knows that the wound on the owlbear was from a blunt weapon, which is similar to Red's bronze sword. But Red continues to deny it, so Albert becomes upset, and he points his sword at Red, telling him that he was going to ask him to join their party, but before he can say anything else, Ritz attacks him, threatening to kill him if he hurts Red. Red calms her down, explaining the situation, and she tells Albert to leave immediately. She expresses her annoyance at Albert's attitude, thinking they should have killed him, but Red explains that killing Albert would be a bad idea since he's the only B-rank adventurer in Zoltan. Ritz wonders why he didn't defend himself, so he tells her that he knew Albert wouldn't go too far and thanks her for protecting him. They enjoy dinner together as they celebrate the success of the apothecary when Ritz reminds Red that they need a bathtub. He says that he has already asked Gons to build one for them, and Ritz says she wants the bathtub to be big enough for two, referring to its size, because she enjoys relaxing in a big tub, but Red gets flustered at the idea. He suggests that they should go to the sauna on their off days, and she agrees to this. We see Red sitting in the sauna, having an endurance contest with Stormy and Gons. They tease Red about his relationship with Ritz, but he tells them to mind their own business. After some time, Red gets up and makes the room steamier, causing Gons to pass out. So they take him outside, where his sister Nao scolds him for exerting himself too much. Stormy notices the lack of customers, and Neff, the sauna's owner, tells them that he has gotten fewer customers after a new bathhouse opened up. Nao gets annoyed at Neff for giving up so fast, telling him that she will keep visiting as long as he serves them drinks. She asks him to give her beer, and the others join in as well. After going back home, Nao and Ritz think of ways to get more customers to Neff's sauna, while Red serves them herbal tea to reduce their fatigue, and he suddenly comes up with an idea. He visits Neff and offers him a sack, explaining that he can use it to add a stream therapy option at his sauna. Neff asks what stream therapy is, and Red explains that it's a technique used by a race of wild elves, where they make an herbal soup and bathe in it to help with their fatigue. He offers to provide Neff with a steady supply of herbal sacks if their idea takes off, and Neff is thankful to them for helping him out. He agrees to continue running his business, letting them relax at the sauna for free. Nao and Ritz suddenly walk in, so he tries to leave, but Ritz stops him and makes him stay with them. They sit together, as Nao tells Ritz that she was smart to pick Red over the other men in the village, and the two discuss how helpful and talented Red is, but he faints from the embarrassment. Neff's sauna becomes popular among the locals once again, and as they all head back home, Ritz tells Red how she never imagined life in Zoltan to be so fulfilling. She tells Red that she wanted to drink mead, because in Logurvia's tradition, when a couple takes a month off from work after getting married, they enjoy mead together. We cut to Rudy's party, where Ares is annoyed that two people left the party, as Tisei tells them she has set up camp. She sits next to Theodora, who asks her if she's disappointed in the party. Tisei says she can't complain, and Theodora tells her that their party didn't have any non-combat conflicts until Gideon left. She wonders why he left, and wishes for him to come back. An official from the Adventurers Guild named Galantine visits the shop, and asks to speak with Ritz. Red tells him that he can speak with her once they are done opening up for the day, but Galantine says he should ask her. He says he knows her well, so Galantine agrees to wait for her outside, as Red goes to ask her, and she says that they should make the officials wait longer. Ritz heads outside to meet the officials, just as a member of the Thieves Guild sneaks in and offers Red a valuable elven coin in exchange for letting Ritz go. But he declines, saying she's priceless, and he wouldn't let her go even if they offered him 1,000 elven coins. The man realizes Red's sincerity, but keeps the offer open in case he changes his mind. Ritz also rejects offers by the officials, and tells them that she has signed a lifetime contract with Red, warning them that if they drive Red out, she will leave with him. Red is happy to hear this, and gives her an amber stone bracelet as a gift, telling her to consider it as down payment for her lifetime employment. Ritz teases Red, telling him that a gift like that might give her the wrong idea, which makes him blush, and he says he will buy her a different gemstone of her choice, but she tells him that anything is fine as long as it's a gift from him. Meanwhile, we see two people as they discuss their plans to get Ritz back in the Adventurers Guild, since she's a wild card, and can cause trouble for them if the guild isn't able to keep an eye on her. We see Ritz thinking about how she never imagined being able to live with Red like this, and remembering her time with Red back in the Heroes Party. In a flashback, we see that Logurvia is struggling to fight back the Demon Lord's army, so they set off for the neighboring Duchy of Sunland to seek help. They have to slip through the Demon Lord's defenses to reach the nation, so Gideon suggests going through the Bewitching Woods, which the demons don't want to enter. Their first stop is a village at the edge of the woods, where they meet Yara, an elf with the blessing to talk to plants, and call upon their aid. Yara explains that people born in her village aren't affected by the magic in the woods, and that she can find her way through the woods simply by listening to the plants. Gideon explains that Yara will act as the key to their strategy, showing how much he trusts her. Gideon's group head into the woods, while Danon and Theodora stay back to protect the villagers, but before setting off, Ares hires mercenaries to gather information about the army's movements. The group makes their way through the woods, and Ritz gets jealous seeing Yara with Gideon, but acts like she doesn't care. Yara walks up to her and suggests that they should bathe together in a nearby river to refresh themselves. Ritz is hesitant at first, but agrees to it, and the two head over to the river. They swim in the river, and Yara asks Ritz if she likes Gideon, saying it couldn't be more obvious, and that Gideon probably likes her too. She advises Ritz to be more playful with Gideon, instead of getting angry out of embarrassment. So Ritz asks her if she feels the same way, but Yara denies it, saying she doesn't fall for humans since they live shorter lives than elves. Yara tells Ritz that she sees Gideon as a close friend, and that she wishes for him to live a simple life for himself, since he's always pushing himself for the party. She tells Ritz that she could be a good fit for Gideon, and that they could support each other. Ritz admits that he carries most of the weight, but Yara tells her it's okay. The group continues their journey, but they run into scouts from the Demon Lord's army, who are searching for them after being tipped off by the mercenaries that Ares hired. Gideon suggests that he and Yara distract them, while Ritz and Rudy break through their lines. They succeed in defeating the scouts, after Rudy slays all of them. Gideon reunites with the party, and Rudy hugs him, apologizing for putting him in danger. After getting help from the neighboring nation, Ritz stays back in Logurvia to help rebuild it, deciding to not join the heroes' party since she didn't want to come between Rudy and Gideon. Back in the present, Ritz feels thankful to have reunited with him and to live a simple life in Zoltan. She heads out to make a delivery and runs into an adventurer who threatens to tell the kingdom that she's living with a man. Ritz isn't bothered by his threats and says that she prefers this life over her previous one as she goes back to finish her delivery. We see Rudy wide awake in her tent, thinking about the time when she found out that her brother left the party. Ares lies to her, saying Gideon left on his own and that he tried to stop him. Rudy senses that he's lying, and she attacks him instinctively before coming back to her senses. She heals him, but we see that she feels there is a hole left behind, ever since her brother left the party. Red visits Dr. Newman to deliver his order, but they are distracted by a commotion outside, which they investigate to find an unconscious man in his home, due to his elevated heart rate. Red suggests giving him an antidote that he made, and when Dr. Newman asks him how he knows about it, Red explains that he maxed out his first aid skill, which allows him to relieve symptoms without knowing the cause. After curing the man, Dr. Newman explains that he suffered from an overdose of the recently approved drug and warns Red that more cases like this might appear, requesting him to stock up on the necessary medicine. Ritz scolds Red for coming home late, but forgives him when he makes lunch for her and tells her what happened. She thinks the drug is dangerous, but Red tells her it isn't their job to track down the seller, and instead suggests they should go to the river to relax. The two enjoy their time swimming and eating barbecue while being awkward at times, but they both laugh at their own embarrassment, and Red points out the irony, since she was very forward with him at the start. Ritz tells him she was always scared he would reject her, but Red reassures her, and she kisses him, saying that she wants to get much closer to him. We see Rudy's party heading into the desert, and Ares reveals that they can find the weapon they're searching for in an old ruins. The group begins resupplying to prepare for the journey, while Tisei collects water for everyone. Rudy walks over, and Tisei asks her if she ever sleeps, since she always finds her awake when she peers into her tent at night. She explains that her blessing erases her need for sleep and food, and suppresses her ability to feel emotions or physical discomfort as a sandstorm blows, but it doesn't have any effect on her. We see Ritz and Red get back to work, as Ritz asks what they will do about the drug, since she heard that it makes users feel like a new person. An injured man barges into the apothecary, asking for help, as Ritz goes out to see what caused this, and finds a member of the Thieves Guild attacking civilians. The man acts strange, and attacks her while other men surround her to prevent her from escaping, but she easily fights them off, and before she can do anything else, Albert appears, and shoots all of them. She asks why he killed them, but Albert doesn't care, telling her she should save the few that are still breathing, and taunts her for not bringing her fiancé. She raises her weapons at him, but drops them, saying it's a ritual she does to quash the urge that her blessing gives to kill him, which terrifies him. She goes back, and tells Red what happened, so he asks her what she wants to do, and she tells him she just wants to keep sleeping on his lap, as Tanta and Al walk towards the shop. They invite them over for lunch, where Al talks about how he was touched by his blessing, which made him feel anxious. Red tells him it must be because he hasn't picked a weapon to master yet, and Al wonders if he can still be the same person after that. Red explains that without the skills of his blessing, he will have a tough time and remain anxious, which disappoints him. Ritz asks Al what he wants to do when he grows up, and he says he wants to help his father with his job. So Red suggests that he could master using a knife and slash ropes that tie the cargo together to make unloading easier, but advises him to choose his weapon carefully. The kids thank them for their help and go back home, right when a woman named Rhea visits the shop to apologize on behalf of Albert's party. Ritz reassures her, wondering what Albert is up to, and Rhea mentions that he's burdening his party by taking on extra guild quests to make up for lazy summer months. She explains that Albert doesn't understand the other's feelings, since his champion blessing urges him to perform great feats, but since he didn't harness his powers fully, he ended up in Zoltan, which he hates. Red assures her that Albert won't leave Zoltan, since he's trying to be its champion, and she's relieved to hear this. We see Danon at a bar, drinking in frustration, when a man walks up to him and offers to search for Gideon with him. A storm brews outside, as the couple enjoy honey and milk, which Red used to make for Rudy, and he reminisces about his time with her when they were younger. We see a younger Red looking at the other kids hugging their moms, when the thunder scares them, so he goes and asks Rudy to hold his hand, saying he's scared of the thunder. When she does, he tells her he wasn't actually scared, and only wanted to hold her hand for no reason. Rudy tells him she loves him, and he returns her feelings, saying she made his day. Rudy asks him if she will stay with her forever, but Red explains that he can't, since he will leave to become a knight, so he can adventure with her. He promises to visit her on off days, wondering if there's anything she would like, and she says warm milk and honey. Red hears a knock on his door, and he opens it to find Dr. Newman carrying an unconscious owl. Dr. Newman tells them that Al's wounds have several stone fragments, and Red wonders what he was doing outside during the storm. Al wakes up in shock, and reveals that Adam attacked him and his parents with an axe, so they rush to his house, where they find Al's parents unconscious. Red is concerned that this attack by Adam will only lead to more trouble, since his father Mullen is the captain of the guard. Adam disappears after the attack, and the townsfolk are outraged, demanding justice, but the town guard refuses to respond. Al's parents are seen as the symbol of protest, and they entrust Al to Red and Ritz. While eating breakfast, Al asks Ritz to teach him how to wield a sword, and they train together outside. Red praises her, but she tells him that it's all because Al's blessing gives him the confidence to wield the weapon. Ritz worries that she won't be a good teacher, as she hopes to teach Al the things her master taught her, but Red tells her she'll do a great job. They see Nail and Gons rushing over to their house, telling them that the town guard had taken Tanta away while he was playing in the neighborhood. They visit Galantine to request a joint inquiry with the town guard, and he agrees to help them, since this will put Ritz in debt. Galantine says he doesn't like seeing youngsters like Nao sad, and gives them a letter to deliver to the captain, who owes him a favor. They go to Captain Mullen's headquarters, where he explains that he gave the order to bring in Tanta for questioning, but didn't think they would tie him up. He releases Tanta and apologizes for the mistreatment. Red asks Mullen why he did that, so he tells Red that Adam may have been killed by a South Marsh resident, since tensions between the residents and the town guard have grown after the recent attacks. Mullen explains how the people think that Adam wasn't the one to attack Al and his parents, but Al insists that he saw him. Mullen tells him he can't confirm his statement, since a lot of the facts about the latest attack puzzle him. Tanta agrees with him, saying he doesn't think Adam did it, since he apologized to him after hitting him, and explained that his dream was to join the town guard, whose job is to protect people rather than hurt them. Mullen asks to speak with Red and Ritz alone, and requests them for their help, so Red asks if there was any sign of Adam using the new narcotic, which he denies, saying he taught Adam to stay away from those things. Red tells him that there are similarities in the attack, and Mullen says there's no way to prove it, since no one has the appraisal skill, and that the drug might give people new blessings. We see Al alone at the apothecary, when a strange man comes to visit him. Red returns home, while Ritz stays back to handle other matters for Galantine, and he offers to train Al in her place. They train for a while, until they're tired, and Al asks Red why he's a D-rank adventurer if he's so good. Red tells him that being good at something doesn't mean you have to rise in stature, but he's happy to see Al accept his blessing and become determined to go down in history as a great person. Al tells Red that he got a sword from someone connected to Big Hawks, the head of the Thieves Guild, and he thought he could become a champion like Ritz if he had it, but he doesn't know if they were his own thoughts or his blessing. Red tells him Theodora's advice to talk to his own weapon and see if it tells him to cut down his enemies or protect people, and Al listens to him. We see Ritz going after a man suspected of selling drugs, but he explodes before she can capture him. Other men come after her, but she's saved by a hooded man, who reveals himself to be Danon. She asks him what he's doing there, and he tells her that he was looking for Gideon, but when he realized that he had found a place to call home, he decided to leave him be. Danon brings her attention to a different issue, related to the men they just fought, who he reveals are stalker demons, telling Ritz that he would like to exchange information with her. Ritz agrees, and heads back home, while Danon looks at her with a sinister expression. She enters the shop, where Red tells her about the sword which she detects a locator spell on, and Red thinks about why the gifter wants to keep track of Al. Ritz hugs Red, and wonders how long they will be able to live together, considering the events she just faced. The next day, Ritz and Red take Al to a trusty swordsmith in Zoltan. Red hears protests outside, and discovers that Big Hawks has been paying people to show up at protests, and keep the town guard busy to investigate the attacks. We see Rudy's group fighting a gargantuan demon in the ruins, as Rudy orders Tisei to look for the weapon while they distract it, and Rudy manages to defeat it. Rudy turns to Ares, telling him that while she provided cover for her brother, she won't be doing that for Ares, since he can protect himself. Ares remembers how easy it was to cast spells with Gideon, but brushes off the thought, and instead thinks it's because the other members left. Tisei returns to report her findings, and they discover that the previous demon lord had an airship, which they board immediately. Tisei asks Rudy if she wants to go anywhere, and Rudy explains that she does, but she needs to focus on finishing her duties as the hero. Ritz and Red sleep together on their new double bed, but decide not to get too intimate for Al's sake. Ritz goes out the next morning with Al's weapon to lure Big Hawks' men, using the locator spell, but as she fights them off, she discovers that they are axe demons. The man who gave him the weapon visits Al at the apothecary, and takes him to Big Hawks, who plans to make him the hero of South Marsh. Big Hawks introduces himself to Al, and tells him how he gains strength by killing anyone who came in his path, making the council powerless against him, and he wants more power, which is why he developed the drug that's become widespread in Zoltan. He tells him that the drug is called the Devil's Blessing, and is made from the hearts of 50 axe demons. He explains that with only one blessing, people are restricted to fulfilling that one role, and end up in despair when it isn't a role they like, but with the Devil's Blessing, people will be able to lead a new life. Big Hawks plans to use Al to win favor among the people, and become their leader, and he calls an Adam, who admits that he took the drug to get stronger. We see a crowd of people waiting outside, as Big Hawks comes out with Al, talking about the injustices they have to face as outsiders in Zoltan. He brings up the incident that occurred at Al's house, and further riles up the people by saying that Adam didn't receive punishment, because he's the captain's son. He brings Adam outside, encouraging Al to take revenge on him, and be the spark that ignites the fire that will forge a new Zoltan, but Al hesitates when he realizes he has to kill Adam. Big Hawks tries to manipulate him by telling him that while he did give Adam the drug, he still tried to kill his parents of his own will, and since Adam has 2 blessings, slaying him will make Al far stronger. Al takes the weapon, but instead of killing Adam, he cuts his ropes to free him, saying his weapon doesn't want him to kill. Big Hawks is disappointed in Al, and offers an axe to Adam, since the Devil's Blessing gives him a murderous urge when he sees an axe, but before Adam can take it, a hooded man disarms him, and reveals himself to be Red. He takes Al and Adam, and escapes to a safer area, where he gives Adam medicine that helps suppress urges from blessings. A man named Ben meets up with them, and takes the kids away to work on their plan. Red sees Big Hawks' men, and he confronts them. Albert charges at him, but Red easily deflects his attack, as he realizes that Red was hiding his true strength. Red asks Big Hawks why he's there, and he reveals that he's a demon who possessed Big Hawks after making a deal with him. But Red tells him he will have a hard time in Zoltan, since it's a lazy town where people take years to get to high positions. The demon agrees, saying this is why he used Albert, who is also an outsider, since he's strong-willed and has a darkness in him. Albert expresses his frustrations at Zoltan's slow-paced life, saying that if he dies there, his life would be a waste. He thinks that while he did forge a contract with a demon, he won't be taking part in evil schemes, but Red points out that his actions have already led to people dying. Albert says that it was a necessary sacrifice to fulfill his goal, which is to unite all of Zoltan so it can join the fight against the Demon Lord, by becoming a military power that will fight under the hero's banner. He asks Red to join him, since he has what it takes to become a hero, saying his decision will decide the fate of Zoltan. But the town guard surrounds him, and Red tells him that he's just an apothecary owner and that it's up to the town guard to arrest him. Albert refuses to go down in history as a criminal and asks Red to fight him so that he can be slain by a hero as he charges at him. Red dodges and cuts off his hand, telling him that he has the potential to be Zoltan's savior, but he suffers due to his desire to become a hero. We see Al and Adam rushing to a crowd, and Ben uses magic to make the children levitate. Al tells everyone what happened, saying he forgives Adam and wants to be friends with him again. The townsfolk drop their weapons, since they have no reason to be angry if Al has forgiven Adam, and they all head home. Ritz and Red relax in their new bathtub, and Ritz asks him why he didn't choose to go with Albert, since he had the chance to rejoin the heroes' party. He hugs her, telling her that he wants nothing more than to be with her, because he loves her, which makes Ritz blush. We see Ben visit Big Hawks, but he realizes that Ben is actually Shin. Shin calls him Belial, and tells him the dangers of peddling the devil's blessing among humans, since it can unleash their true power. Belial says he did it to destroy the Demon Lord's plan, revoking his contract with Big Hawks, and runs to Albert's cell to forge a contract with him and escape to the heroes' party, where Rudy confronts them. Al leaves on his first adventure, which makes Red think of him as a son, and Ritz agrees, saying kids aren't so bad. Ares is devastated to see Rudy leave him behind, while Theodora tells him the hero can manage without him, as she goes inside the tent and sees that Rudy left her hero badge behind. Shin, still disguised as Ben, reports the completion of his quests to Megria, which qualifies him as a B-rank adventurer, and we learn that he's working on resolving the drug case. We learn that Tisei and Rudy are heading to Zoltan to find an alchemist, after hearing out Belial and trying the drug to suppress her blessing. Rudy asks Tisei to treat her as a commoner there, which makes her nervous, even though she doesn't show it. Red is bored at his shop due to the lack of customers, and considers selling an item that will make customers visit his shop in the cold. Ritz tells him that people in Lagurvia used hand warmers, which gives him the idea to develop it using his own formula. He hands out samples around town, and they are an instant hit, but he realizes he forgot to save one for himself on his way back home. He runs into Ritz, and she teases him a little, and shares her hand warmer that she saved as it starts snowing. They cuddle on a bench nearby, and she asks him why he keeps looking at her when he can enjoy the snow. So he tells her that this is the first time he gets to see her in the snow, and the two continue to flirt and kiss while no one is around. Rudy and Tisei change their clothes to blend in with the townsfolk, and decide not to call each other by their real names. They pass a bridge, where an arrogant knight named Otto blocks everyone's path, unless they pay him 100 perils. So Rudy throws him in the river, and continues onward, while Tisei worries that people will discover her identity. Red crosses the same bridge later, and finds a naked Otto who tries to take his money to buy new clothes and armor, but is once again thrown into the river. Rudy brings a slain monster to the gate, saying that it would have caused trouble later on, as Tisei continues to stress out at her impulsive behavior, which could end up revealing her identity. Red walks by the gate later, and heads over to a food stall, where Tisei joins him. Red analyzes Tisei's mannerisms, and deduces that she must be an assassin, since she has good weapons, and conceals herself like a pro. Tisei also analyzes Red, and sees that he has suffered plenty of injuries, deducing that he's a pro who has seen his fair share of battles. The two look at each other suspiciously, but say nothing, and decide to take food back home. Tisei heads over to the inn, and warns Rudy of the man she encountered, telling her to be careful, since he could cause them trouble. Rudy inquires about him, and Tisei tells her that he was able to notice her concealed weapons and armor, indicating he's among the top adventurers in Zoltan, who might have ulterior motives for staying in that quiet city. Rudy says that the title is held by a man named Ben, but Tisei tells her that looks can be deceiving, since that man had the bearings of a trained knight. She asks Rudy if they should work with him or against him, and Rudy says that they can't work with him, since the alchemist she seeks is being held in prison, so Tisei suggests they should carefully plan the next steps to find the alchemist. Rudy tries to come up with a successful prison break plan, by thinking the way Gideon does, and wishes to see him again. A fairy visits the apothecary, and urgently takes Red and Ritz to a patient, who turns out to be a water elemental. Red checks her symptoms, and tells her that she's under a powerful curse, which is depleting her spiritual energy. He gives her medication to help her recover, and Ritz suggests that the cold outbreak in the town might be linked with the same curse. Rudy finds the alchemist Godwin and asks him to make her more devil's blessings. He looks at Rudy and becomes scared of the dead stare that she gives him and agrees to do anything for her. She takes Godwin captive and asks Tisei to suggest an apothecary where she can find medicine to heal his wounds. Tisei tells Rudy about the famous apothecary that makes Lagurvian hand warmers, and the two decide to go there. Rudy arrives at the shop, and they are surprised to see each other, but Rudy's shock turns into happiness, and she goes to hug her brother. Gons and Tisei are surprised to learn that Rudy and Red are related, and Tisei asks if it's okay to let Gons leave after what he witnessed, but Red assures her that he's trustworthy. Tisei introduces herself to Red, and he realizes that she's his replacement in the party. She asks him if he lives with someone, and he tells them about Ritz. He turns to Rudy and tells her the real reason why he left, and apologizes for his sudden disappearance. She understands, and tells him she will take care of Ares, so that he can join the party again, since it's incomplete without him due to Ares' incompetency. Red politely declines her offer, and tells her he has found a reason to stay in Zoltan, which she understands, and decides to move to the town to be with him. Ritz returns with supplies, but is surprised when she sees Rudy. Red asks her why she came to Zoltan, and she tells him that she came looking for him, since they can't defeat the Demon Lord without him. Ritz asks Red what he will do, and he reassures her that he will stay and run the shop with her, but she wonders if it's okay to leave Rudy. Rudy gets up to head back to the inn, and Red tells her he will always be there for her. On her way back, Rudy feels a jolt due to her blessing, since she forgot to suppress her emotions while around Red, so she takes the drug to weaken herself further. Ritz questions Red's decision, and tells him that Rudy needs him, so he assures her that he will think about it, and talk with Rudy again another time. Tisei goes to check up on Godwin, and he tells her they need to leave town fast, or he will get caught and be executed. She conveys this to Rudy, who tells her that she will stay for a week to search for an elven ruin, and leave afterwards. Tisei suddenly feels intimidated by Rudy when she starts walking over to her, so she immediately pulls out her weapon to defend herself. Rudy apologizes for scaring her, and tells her she meant no harm, which makes Tisei realize that she overreacted. Tisei sees Rudy in a new light, as she understands that while Rudy is the hero with a huge responsibility, she's still a girl who has been left isolated due to her lack of communication skills. Tisei brings out her pet spider to let Rudy touch him, and the two girls become friends. We see Shin trying to locate elf ruins on a map, and check his crystal to find that the curse he put on the water elemental was lifted. Rudy welcomes customers to the shop, but they run away when they see her dead stare. So Red tells her she should try to smile more, and asks if she would like to join him for a trip around town. Rudy agrees, and Tisei offers to stay back and look after the shop with Ritz. Red takes her to the sauna, where she quickly becomes popular for her eccentric behavior. She apologizes to Red for drawing attention to herself, but he tells her it's okay, since he's happy to introduce her to people as his pride and joy, which makes Rudy happy, and she wishes for this day to last forever. We see the rest of Rudy's party heading over to Zoltan with the help of Albert, who Theodora offers to buy a prosthetic hand for. Albert tells her about the man who cut his hand off, saying he doesn't understand why he doesn't want to be a champion when he's so powerful, and Theodora questions whether they really need to follow the path their blessings set for them when they were given free will. Rudy asks to take a bath with Ritz, and Tisei offers to join them since she likes to keep records of the different places she has bathed in. She watches Rudy and Ritz closely as they talk about their experiences with Red. Rudy tells her that she was weak as a kid and recounts the first time she battled. We see a young Rudy trying to protect another child from an owlbear while struggling to defend herself. She thinks about how she'll have to suffer more pain later on, even if she survives this encounter, since her blessing urges her to put her life on the line to save others, even though they despise her for being creepy. Rudy thinks about her brother and is determined to survive since she wants to be with him. She calls for him, and Red instantly appears to cut the owlbear in half. Rudy tells Ritz how her brother always stayed by her side when she was in pain and cried for her, which made her happy. She admits that she no longer enjoys baths and food due to her blessing, but she still remembers how they used to make her feel. She continues saying that she envies her for being able to cry and laugh freely, and she starts crying, saying she never wanted to be a hero and that she only wished to be free. Tisei realizes that Rudy has only been holding onto the past, since her blessing has made her suffer, and she finds a new determination to help Rudy. Red thanks Tisei for being Rudy's friend, saying he's aware of the changes that Rudy has been going through due to her blessing, and decides to speak with Godwin to learn more about the potential effects that the devil's blessing may have on her. Tisei tells him she will stop by the port to buy the equipment Godwin needs to make more concoctions, and the group prepares to head out to rent drakes for their trip. Red runs into Danon at the port, and the two catch up over tea. We see Theodora and Albert's group searching around the port to gather information, while Ares goes off to do his own thing. When they notice Red and Danon together, they conceal themselves and follow them around. Danon tells Red that the party was struggling without him, so he came looking for him, but Red reaffirms his wishes to stay in Zoltan. Danon considers this, and says that he'll stay in town a little longer to see how Red is doing, before he decides what to do. Red tells him that Rudy is also in town, and explains her situation to him, which Danon is surprised to hear, and he becomes determined to work with Red to save her. They leave together to discuss their plans elsewhere, and talk about how Danon lost his hand. We see another Danon meet Ares at the inn, and tell him everything he knows about Gideon's whereabouts. Ares is annoyed to hear about Red living peacefully with a princess, and demands to know where his apothecary is, so he can tell him to stay out of Rudy's life. He arrives at Red's shop, and destroys everything in sight out of anger, while imposter Danon tells him he's wasting his time. Red learns from the real Danon that Shin is alive, because he was attacked by him, and lost his arm when a creature bit it off. They spot a drake in the sky, carrying Ares and imposter Danon to the mountains, where Rudy went to explore, so they decide to follow it. Red catches up with Ritz first, and tells her what Danon told him, and she apologizes for not telling him that she met Danon before, but Red realizes that the one she met was actually Shin. They decide to fight, and end it once and for all, so that they can continue living a peaceful life. Red rushes over to the ruins, and navigates his way through them easily, until he finds the room where Godwin is staying, and tells him to call for Rudy. Godwin refuses, since Rudy terrifies him, so Red twists his arm, which makes him yell in pain, and she immediately bursts into the room. Red tells her that he's been working on a concoction that will help suppress her blessing, but she doesn't understand his motives, since she always thought that he wanted to become a knight and save the world. Red corrects her, saying his main goal is to protect her, since she's precious to him, and he doesn't mind if she decides to give up on being a hero. Rudy wonders if it's okay for her to do what she wants, so Red tells her that her life is her own to live, and she hugs him, telling him she loves him, and that he's the best big brother. We see Shin and Ares searching for Rudy on the mountain, as Shin tells Ares about the elven ruins that lie there. The real Danon reunites with Theodora, and hops on her drake to catch up with the others. Rudy's group reunites with Tisei, and Red suggests that they should talk to Godwin about the drug, when Rudy explains that while the devil's blessing's curse didn't affect her, it awakened a nameless blessing within her. Godwin is puzzled to hear this, but tells them that since the blessing doesn't give Rudy any murderous urges, it shouldn't cause too much trouble. Tisei suddenly senses something approaching them, which Red recognizes as plague eyes, which will multiply and reveal their position when attacked. Rudy destroys all of them with a spell, and runs in the direction that they came from. Red runs after her, and they find a completely deranged Ares waiting for them in a chamber. He demands Rudy to come with him and fight the demon lord alone, but Rudy declines, and explains her decision to stay with Red. Ares attacks Red after hearing this, so Rudy stabs him, and tells him to heal himself since she avoided his vitals, and asserts her decision to quit being a hero. Shin arrives, and offers to help him, but Ares realizes that he's a demon with no blessing. Shin suggests teaming up with him, and tells him that a relic of the first hero lies in the ruins, which will make the hero come back to his side. Ares is determined to find the relic, since he believes it's his life's purpose to fight alongside Rudy from the moment he met her. Red tells the others about their encounter with Ares, and they realize that the plague eyes were his doing. Tisei detects Ares' movements, and informs them that he has proceeded to the lower levels of the ruins with another person, which they suspect is Shin. They decide to confront him to stop his plans, and Godwin has no choice but to follow them to stay safe. Theodora takes Danon to the ruins, and tells him that she brought him there because she wants him to be with her no matter what choices they make. Danon doesn't understand her words, but tells her to do what she wants, saying he will do as he pleases. He proceeds to force his way through the ruins, and he reaches Ares. Shin immediately attacks him, but when Danon easily overpowers him with his newfound strength, he desperately asks Ares to help him. Ares hesitates for a bit, before casting a spell to distract Danon, as Shin stabs him, and uses a spell to blast him from within. Danon manages to withstand it and continues fighting Shin, who has revealed his true form, until he inevitably collapses. Ares notes how calm he feels for betraying his ally, but realizes that he felt the same way when manipulating Gideon to leave, so he could take his place. He follows Shin deeper into the ruins, and ends up in a room, where they find the true holy swords, which they decide to call the Sacred Avengers. Shin explains that the sword that the hero uses is only a copy of it, and that her blessing is also a copy of the hero's will. He tells Ares that they will have to give Rui the Sacred Avenger, and take away the one thing that drives her desire to be a normal person, which Ares realizes is her brother. Red's group navigates through the ruins, as Rudy gives him his favorite sword. They head into a room where they encounter Shin, disguised as the captain of the Royal Guard. They attack him, but struggle as Ares uses fire magic to drive them away, while Rudy shields them, and tells Ares she will forgive him if he surrenders. Ares remains stubborn, and the two use powerful attacks to overpower the other. Albert and Theodora find Danon, and give him medicine to help heal his wounds, and save his life. Rudy continues to fight Ares, who tries to make Rudy touch the Sacred Avenger, but she creates a strong whirlwind, which breaks everyone's weapons. Theodora suddenly jumps in, chaining Ritz near a monster, and she starts fighting Rudy, saying she needs to be sacrificed for the sake of the world. Rudy insists that she doesn't want to be the hero anymore, but Theodora tells her that countless lives will be lost if she doesn't fulfill her role. She tells her that while Gideon is strong, he's incapable of defeating the Demon Lord without Rudy's help. Ritz breaks free, and asks Theodora why she thought it was okay to place her life in the hero's hands. Theodora reminds her that her village was saved because of the hero, but Ritz corrects her, saying it was their party that saved her homeland. She argues that people are more than their blessings, and that they saved Lagurvia with their own beliefs. Theodora says that she shouldn't question the Almighty's will, but Ritz says that she's wrong for putting burdens on unwilling shoulders. Red notices the Drake regaining consciousness, and slays it to save Ritz, but Ares casts a spell to separate them from the others. Rudy jumps in to save them, but fails, and Shin manages to break her sword. Ares celebrates his victory over Red, and goes to fight Tisei, who tells him his views are wrong, and that she's determined to let Rudy live a normal life. Danon sees the iron wall with Red and Ritz, and uses his powers to save them. Red immediately charges at Ares, and with Ritz's help, he avoids his attacks, and cuts his hands off, leaving him to die. Rudy continues to fight Shin, who tells her she doesn't deserve to live a peaceful life, since she's the hero. Hearing this makes her feel a rage inside her, stemming from the nameless blessing, and she attacks Shin relentlessly, unknowingly grabbing a Sacred Avenger, which she uses to slash him down. She joins the others, but instead of helping them, she attacks Red, who is tending to Theodora. Tisei protects Red, and tries to get through to Rudy, who seems to have lost all emotion from her face. Red puts Tisei down to face Rudy, who attacks him without hesitation. He dodges her attacks, and pulls out his bronze sword, using it to disarm Rudy and bring her back to her senses. She rushes to help Tisei, but her powers don't respond to her, making her feel helpless, so Theodora walks over and heals Tisei's wounds instead, saying she won't ask for forgiveness, as she believed she had no choice but to betray Rudy. She didn't understand why Rudy didn't set off to find Gideon when the party fell apart, but she now realizes that being the hero is a lonely and cruel fate. Theodora prepares to accept her punishment, but Albert interrupts, saying she fought for the sake of the world and should be spared. Tisei regains consciousness and apologizes to Rudy for worrying her, but Rudy is just happy to see her alive. Rudy tells Theodora that she never wanted to be the hero and only wishes to live as herself. She tells Theodora that her determination makes her more of a hero than her, and Red adds that he believes a hero is someone who saves the world of their own free will. Theodora is inspired, and asks if she can become a guide like him, so he tells her that if she wants to, it's definitely possible, making her realize it's much better than fighting comrades for the sake of the Almighty's laws. Red returns to his shop, and sees the damage Ares did to it, but he forgets about it as it begins to snow. Rudy and Tisei join him at his shop, as Rudy enjoys being able to feel cold again. Red invites them in for breakfast, and we learn that Rudy's new blessing is powerful enough to control other blessings, but she's mostly just using it to suppress her hero's blessing. Rudy tells them that she wants to buy a farm where she can grow medicinal herbs, and promises to stop by the funeral later when she's free. Ritz stays back to look after the shop, while the rest of them attend Aries' funeral, and we see them pray for him to not suffer in his next life. The group discusses their plans after they leave the church, and Danon tells them he will be leaving in a few days after taking a break. He brings up his concerns about how Shin was able to wield holy swords, and Red suggests that there might be another missing sword. Red assures Rudy that the Demi-Almighty would respect her choice to live freely, and we see that Red's shop is restored thanks to Gons. Ritz admits that she has an irrational fear of waking up and finding that he isn't next to her. She says that everyone needs his guidance, so he might leave to guide someone else instead. She adds how she feared that Red wouldn't want to return to the shop after it got trashed, but Red tells her that she's the reason he returns to the shop every day. He confesses that the first time they reunited in Zoltan, her words had made him happy because she knew he wasn't perfect, but chose to stay with him anyway. The two share an intimate moment in bed and talk about their future plans, as Red tells her that he wishes to spend their days together and looks forward to having kids in the future. He asks her what her favorite gemstone is, and she tells him she prefers whichever one he picks for her. Red and Rudy go out to explore the town the next morning, and he introduces his sister to the merchants as he buys her a gift. They walk around the city, and she tells Red how happy she is to spend time with him and make amazing friends. She asks him to stay with her forever, and he tells her he'll be with her for as long as she wants him, before they lie down on the grass, and Rudy falls asleep. Back at the apothecary, Megria rushes to the shop and urgently asks Rudy to help fight a band of ogres who have seized a village and captured adventurers. Rudy agrees to help, and Tisei says that Rudy is still a hero, but one who fights of her own free will. Red tells Rudy he will make whatever she likes when she gets back, and she asks him for warm milk and honey. We see Godwin talking to Yara about Zoltan, saying that while it's a boring town, he thinks it's the perfect place to lead a slow life. Yara gets up, and we see that she's determined to meet Gideon and Ritz once again. We see a boy named Van, who prays to Demis, promising to follow the hero's path. A cardinal named Lubo enters and introduces his new companion named Esta. Van appears to be impressed, wondering if she's the knight who defeated the Demon Lord's general. Esta confirms this, and he introduces himself as Van Flameberg. Lubo explains that he's the surviving prince of the Flameberg kingdom, which was destroyed by the Demon Lord's army, and it's by God's will that he became a hero. A fairy named Lavender appears and introduces herself as Van's closest partner. Lubo thinks the team is complete, and Van declares that he will start the story of the hero who saves the world. Meanwhile, Godwin guides Yara to Zoltan and asks her to let him go because he has already told her where Rudy is, but Yara doesn't trust him. The guard of Zoltan looks at Godwin suspiciously, but Yara explains they're adventurers, so he lets them pass, while Godwin thinks Zoltan is for losers. Rudy is hiking with Red and Ritz, and she's happy because it's her first time traveling with her brother without being on a mission. They decide to take a break and drink tea, and the dwarf Mogrim is surprised that Red's group is going to the wall at the end of the world just for an engagement ring. He thinks Red is unusual, but he explains that he wants the blue sapphire because it matches Ritz's eyes. He knows they're rare, but the gem giants must have it, and he doesn't want to be cheap since it's a once-in-a-lifetime gift. Ritz blushes, as Mogrim thinks he's rubbing their love in his face, but Red knows he's also there for his wife, and Rudy inquires about her. So he explains that she's pregnant and might need to have a C-section, so he wants to make an earth crystal knife, which is so sharp that a person won't even realize they've been cut. Rudy realizes that everyone is there for someone else, saying she's there for Red, because he has always adventured for her, so she's happy to support him this time. They continue their journey, but encounter a group of goblins. They start fighting them, and Mogrim is impressed to see a goblin using one of his swords, but even more impressed seeing Rudy defeat them with her bare hands. After the fight, Mogrim notices a spear also made by him, and Red believes that his customer was attacked by goblins. He thinks the world is violent, and no one goes through life without fighting, as everyone wants to defeat someone with a blessing to evolve their skills. Rudy says she decided to stop fighting and live her life, but she wonders if that's right. Yara and Godwin arrive at Red's shop, but they realize he isn't there, and Godwin asks her to let him go. When a guard appears looking for him, the guard can't believe that he has the courage to come back, and Yara mentions that he's Red's friend, but the guard explains that he's a criminal who kidnapped the children Red and Ritz were protecting. Yara wonders if this is true, and he tries to explain, but she seems upset. He tries to run away, but Yara stops him, trying to kill him, but Tisei saves him, wondering what he did. He explains that Yara misunderstood him, but Yara uses her summoning magic, causing a dragon to emerge from the ground. But there's suddenly an ice spell that freezes the dragon in an instant. Godwin recognizes her as Mistram, the former mayor of Zoltan, and Tisei asks her for cover, dashing forward while evading the dragon's attack. She's able to get close, but Yara manages to restrain her. Yara wonders who she is, and she mentions that she's a friend of Red, but Yara doesn't believe her. She explains that they went to the end of the world to get a gem for their engagement rings, and Yara is surprised to hear this. She releases Tisei, realizing that she's telling the truth, and Mistram tells her to fix the mess before leaving. The group is in a Zug monster village, but Mogrim is nervous because Zugs are man-eating monsters. But Red thinks they will be fine because their elder is his friend. The Zugs know about the wall at the end of the world, so he wants to inquire about the gem giants. The elder approaches Red, and Red gives him a piece of meat. Red wonders if he knows about the giant settlement, but the elder warns him to be careful, as the giants have been acting strange lately because they appear to be angry. A young Zug falls from a tree, so Rudy heals it, and Ritz thinks the branch broke because the trees are unwell, revealing that the spirits told her, so she asks Red to make a fertilizer. At night, Rudy and Mogrim are sleeping, and Red finishes his fertilizer, when Ritz appears, wondering what's on his mind. He mentions that he was thinking about Rudy's blessing, saying her new ability is canceling the side effects of the hero's blessing, and she seems to be happy because of this. He's worried because he doesn't know what's happening, but he wants to help her, and Ritz tells him that she's also rooting for Rudy. Tisei and Yara are trying to find Red and Ritz, and Yara notices that the soil has gone bad, so something must be happening in the mountains. They set up camp, and Yara wonders why Tisei joined her, and Tisei claims that it was because of the hot springs at the wall, but she's actually worried about Yara's reaction, because she's about to find out that Rudy has given up on being the hero. Tisei wonders why Yara joined the heroes group, but Yara doesn't understand how she knows this, and when she mentions that she's a friend of Red and Ritz, Yara realizes that Red is Gideon, explaining that she joined the heroes group because of him. Yara thinks that saving the world would be good, but it's absurd to try to defeat the Demon Lord with just 6 people, and thinks that not everything needs to be left in the hero's hands. Yara realizes that Tisei is also worried about the hero, and is happy to find out that Rudy is with Red. Red and the others reach the top of the mountain, and while watching the sky, he tells Rudy to live the life she wants, and promises to support her, even against God. Tisei suddenly calls Rudy, and Yara gets emotional, jumping into Red's arms. Meanwhile, Van's group has just killed a monster, and Esta mentions that there's a casualty, saying it's because they arrived late, but Van explains that the person fulfilled his role, and the bear was destined to kill him. Esta is confused, but Van says it was all according to the will of Demis, and through the person's sacrifice, he is able to fulfill his role as the hero. The group takes a break to drink tea, and Yara is glad to be reunited with Red, saying she's happy that he's living together with Ritz. She suggests moving to the kingdom of Kiramin with her, and the two are surprised, but Rudy immediately rejects the idea. Yara explains that Kiramin is the largest city-state on the continent of Avalon, and it has good weather because of magic, saying the High Elves would never betray their allies. Red thought it came out of nowhere, but Yara is still upset that he was kicked out of the heroes' party. He explains he could no longer keep up with the battles, but she still wanted to travel with him, even if he became a burden. She wonders why Ritz was left alone by her own country, so she explains that it was her idea, but Yara says she wouldn't let her go. They appreciate Yara's concern, but refuse to go with her, because they're already happy in Zoltan. She worries that Red might be betrayed again, but he thinks it's okay, because the friendships he has in Zoltan is enough for him. She seems disappointed, so Red and Ritz invite her to live with them, but she thinks Kiramin is better. Red starts to make more tea because of the cold, but Tisei mentions that she knows a place where they could warm up. They go to the hot springs and are amazed by the view. Yara hugs Rudy, happy that she's finally free to live her life, as Tisei rates the hot spring 95 out of 100. Ritz wonders what kind of monsters the gem giants are, so Rudy explains that they gain energy by cutting gems. Tisei imagines it's like how they need to eat to survive, but Ritz finds the comparison odd. Yara wonders where Red is, and we learn he is bathing alone, because Mogrim hates taking baths. But Yara finds this sad, so they decide to join him. Tisei asks Rudy if she's okay with Red and Ritz getting married, so Rudy mentions that she wants Ritz to marry Red because she would treat him well. Rudy knows that she can't marry him because they're siblings, but thinks she can still be his lover. She decides to join Red, leaving Tisei in a state of shock. Mogrim is unhappy because Yara invited Red and Ritz to live in Kiramin. She explains that they would have a better life there, but Mogrim thinks the High Elves are lawless, so it's better to stay in Zoltan with dwarves, and Ritz realizes that the High Elves don't get along with them. The group finally arrives at the settlement of the Gem Giants, but they notice something is wrong. They meet the leader of the Giants, who apologizes for not being able to offer anything to them, but the group doesn't mind, so Red pulls out Zoltan glass, saying they want to trade it. The Gem Giants find it beautiful, but the leader explains they don't have gems to trade. Red and Ritz are worried, and a young giant approaches the group to look at the glass. Red ends up giving the glass to him, making him happy, so he makes a small cut in the glass and gains energy. Red offers all of his glass, asking the leader to distribute it among them, since they don't need to offer anything in return. The leader finally accepts, and everyone celebrates it, as the leader offers his eternal gratitude. The Gem Giants start cutting the glass, and while Rudy watches, she asks Red why Demis created them this way, since every living being was created for a purpose. Red explains that by defeating the giants, humans acquire gems, so maybe they were made to become enemies and develop their blessings. Rudy realizes that battles are inevitable if what he said is true, but she thinks that they serve a greater purpose. After eating, the giant leader thanks the group again, and Red wonders what's happening with the settlement. So the leader explains that a gem beast started living there, turning the minerals into lead infused with magic. Yara realizes that the entire region would be in danger if the groundwater is contaminated with the lead because it's poisonous, while Rudy realizes this could be related to the weakening of the Zug's trees. They decide to defeat the monster, but Ritz wonders how they would fight it. Red heard about the monster before, since a party fought a gem beast in the past, but they couldn't defeat it. The leader explains they also couldn't defeat the monster, so he's worried that Red's group will suffer casualties, but he can't just ignore it, so they head to a mine, where they find the remaining gems, thinking the beast might come to eat them. But the monster finds them first, and Rudy senses something, warning them to dodge, as the monster attacks with an energy beam, which hits the rocks, turning it into lead. The beast moves from beneath the ground, and it emerges, channeling an energy beam, but Rudy manages to block it with her holy shield. The shield breaks, but she manages to protect everyone. Yara tries to immobilize the monster using her thorns, but they rot away. Ritz and Tisei attack, but their blades are useless against the monster's skin, and Rudy strikes, but her sword ends up breaking. Red thinks about its weakness, while Rudy draws the hero's sword, and manages to knock the creature down. Red notes that the impact was weaker than expected, so he thinks it's using magic to support its body. Rudy tries to strike the monster again, but it uses her holy shield to block her sword, and also uses Yara's thorns against them. The group manages to cope, but the creature continues using their spells, and they realize it can replicate abilities when it suddenly uses fire and water magic at the same time. They think that the monster has multiple blessings, and it launches meteorites at them, but Rudy uses her holy shield and deflects the meteorites back at the monster. The monster falls, and they decide to weaken its blessing, so they use wild elf medicines. Yara takes a mana potion and uses her dragon to immobilize the monster, while Red and Ritz work together to put the medicine in its mouth. With its blessing weakened, the monster falls to the ground, unable to handle its weight, and Rudy finally destroys it with her fist. The contaminated minerals return to normal, while she notices inscriptions on the monster. They return home, and Mogrim is pleased to finally have the earth crystal. Red seems to be happy for him, but he didn't find the blue sapphire for the ring. The group enjoys the beautiful view on the way back, and Yara declares that she has decided to live in Zoltan for now, since she's curious about the place. Yara asks Rudy if it's okay, and when she approves, Red decides to prepare a welcome party. That evening, Van asks Lubo for approval to join the battle on the front line, but Lubo wants him to go out with Esta to enhance their blessings. The conversation is interrupted, as Lubo is informed that the airship of the former demon lord was seen heading for Zoltan. Lubo decides to send a scout, and Van appears to be interested in joining, but Esta and Lubo remind him to focus on monster hunting and strengthening their blessings, while Lubo plans to investigate Zoltan and come up with a new plan for Van. Esta returns home, where she meets Albert, and when she removes her mask, we discover that she's Theodora. Esta explains that the airship Rudy used to go to Zoltan has been spotted, and Van might head to Zoltan to investigate, so she asks Albert to inform Red about this. He agrees to do it, wondering if the new hero is real, so she explains that he must be, since the saint and the church leadership have recognized Van as the new hero, but she finds him different from Rudy. Al arrives early at Red's shop to buy dragon mushroom essence, which provides energy. Red is surprised that she came so early, and Al explains it's a festival day, so she wants to enjoy it early. We see Red also preparing for the festival, and Ritz wonders how she looks, so he tells her that she looks great. While walking, Red explains that the Drake Rider and the Solstice Festival are based on an Avalonian legend, and even the Zons who like to lie down are busy from early on. They see Gons and Tana eating, as Gons wonders if they're having fun. Red notices he's in a great mood, since he doesn't have to work, and Gons explains how he's going to take the next day off, because he knows he's going to have a hangover. Tanta is impressed with Gons, and Red is worried that he might grow up to be lazy, so he tries to influence Tanta, saying he would return to work the next day. But Tanta isn't impressed, and he points to the crowd enjoying the festival. Seeing how Zoltan celebrates the festival, Ritz realizes that the celebration is different in each region, because the festival is more formal in her country. But she notes that the goal is the same, because the Zoltans are also trying to repel the winter demon. Tanta mentions that in Zoltan, they sing and dance as they celebrate with all their hearts. Gons thinks that's why it's better to take the next day off, and Ritz agrees with him, trying to convince Red to do the same. So he decides to rest tomorrow, and the trio rejoices. They realize that Rudy and Tisei also took the day off, and Red can't believe they have all become lazy. They suddenly hear a commotion outside, as a boy argues with a young man about who's cutting the line. The boy becomes violent, throwing a bottle at him, but Adam catches it, saying he shouldn't do that. Adam explains that the boy is unstable, because his blessing has recently awakened, and he apologizes for his actions, as the young man accepts the apology. Red seems concerned when the elf says the boy can't be blamed for the impulses of his blessing, and wonders if that's right. They notice how Adam is becoming a fine young man, and suddenly hear Yara calling them in the crowd. Tisei notices two suspicious people, but ignores them when Yara approaches. She appears to be having fun, revealing that she bought a mask used by a legendary sage. Tisei finds this innocent, asking Yara how old she is, so she jokes that people see her as a young lady of 50 years. The group goes to Apara's stall to eat, but Apara seems nervous to see an elf from Kiramen among them. She reveals that elves identify themselves by their birthplace, and Kiramen elves are special even among high elves, so a Zoltan elf like her is considered as a country bumpkin. Yara says her origin doesn't matter, but she's still nervous, and Rudy asks her not to worry because she's her friend. Apara calms down, and the group starts choosing what to eat. Rudy and Tisei order skewers, while Ritz decides to try everything, saying it looks great. Red wonders what Yara wants to eat, and she orders the same as him. When they receive their orders, Red notices an expensive condiment, and Apara explains that Rudy ordered them, but he doesn't want to let her pay for it. She shows him her earnings from being an adventurer, determined to spoil them. He asks Tisei to stop her, but she's excited to eat the order, and is amazed after the first bite. Rudy keeps looking at him, so he gives up denying, and they enjoy the food, while Rudy happily watches them. After the meal, the group meets Godwin and Mistram. Godwin tries to avoid them, but she hits him, saying he no longer needs to run away, since he's the trade representative with the Zoogs, so he should act like it. Tisei is concerned about his reliability, but Mistram says he has skills, asking him to work hard for his mistakes. They notice that the festival is about to end, but the guard is tired because the winter demon refuses to be hit, so the guard tells him to follow the script. He suddenly gets excited after seeing Rudy, but she doesn't remember who he is, or having thrown him off the bridge on the way to Zoltan. The guard tries to introduce himself, but the winter demon knocks him out. Red looks at him and realizes that Danon is the winter demon. He approaches them, removing his mask, and Yara greets him, wondering what happened to his arm. But he insists he's fine, so he returns to the stage and continues to play his role as the winter demon, allowing the guards to win. Red and Ritz dance around the bonfire, while Tisei watches and becomes alarmed when she overhears drunkards talking about a hidden airship in Zoltan. Ritz notices Rudy staring at them, so she lets Red dance with her. Rudy thanks him for the day, but he explains that it's not over yet and invites her to dance. She hesitates, but Red insists, saying the important thing is to have fun. While dancing, she wonders if she's allowed to be happy, and he thinks she's endured enough pain for others, so he thinks it's time for her to enjoy life. On the other hand, Lubo asks Esta about Van, and she explains that his incredible growth rate exceeded her expectations, saying it's a waste to send him to an insignificant place like Zoltan. But Lubo still deems it necessary to investigate the airship in Zoltan and asks Esta to provide support. Meanwhile, Red and Ritz prepare for bed and promise to go to the festival together in the coming years, and they share a kiss. Red gives Ritz an engagement necklace, promising to obtain the blue sapphire, and he places the necklace around her neck. He thinks it looks great on her, and Ritz blushes, so she throws herself at him, asking him to take responsibility for the love he makes her feel. Meanwhile, suspicious people are searching for the airship, but Tisei finds them. They flee upon recognizing her, wondering what she's doing in Zoltan, but they're soon caught by a web. She corners them, but someone throws daggers and cuts through the web, allowing the men to escape. Tisei recognizes him, but he throws a dagger and disappears. Lubo's men find the Demon Lord's airship, and a man named Keegath orders them to investigate it. One of them asks Keegath why he was so cautious to leave his hideout without reason, so he explains that someone was already watching, like a spider ready to pounce. Rudy starts her day thankful for being able to sleep and wake up in the morning, and she sticks to her usual routine. She's grateful for her new truth blessing, as she wouldn't be able to enjoy her life if she were still the heroine. Rudy greets Tisei's spider, and notices that she seems worried about something. The two visit their herb farm, and Rudy thanks Tisei for her help in cultivation, since two heads are better than one, making Tisei happy. She's surprised that Rudy chose to grow herbs, so she explains that she wants the herbs to be her main job, while adventuring would be her side job. She tries to ask Tisei about the previous night, but Tisei starts working. She notices something wrong with the herbs, and her spider informs her that the soil is cold. They don't know what to do, so they call Red, and he explains that it was caused by cold mold, a common problem for herbs, but he knows how to fix it. They decide to help, so he teaches them the dosages and how to mix the necessary chemicals. After spraying the chemicals on the herbs, they just have to wait until they recover. Rudy thanks Red and continues checking the herbs again, while Red and Tisei comment on how she has changed, happy that she's finally living a peaceful life. But Tisei appears to be worried about something, and Rudy notices this. The next day, Rudy asks Tisei about the plan for the day. She talks about the herbs, but Rudy informs her that they have already been taken care of, so she mentions that she has no other plans. They walk through the market, and Tisei keeps wondering about the important task, so Rudy mentions that Red bought her a hairpin from here, giving Tisei a serious look, so she thinks it's a hidden message to stay alert. A crazed Drake suddenly rushes towards her, but Rudy easily stops it and orders it to sit, leaving everyone amazed, and making Tisei think about how Rudy draws attention. They go to the theater to watch a play, and Tisei doesn't understand what happened with the important task. She tries to enjoy the story, but suddenly sees Rudy on the stage. She realizes the actor's sword is cursed, and the actor refuses to give it up, thinking his performance improved because of it, but he suddenly gets possessed. Rudy tries to explain that she's just an adventurer, and Tisei pretends to be surprised by the twist in the play, making the princess continue acting and ask for Rudy's help. She fights the demon, while Tisei realizes she's drawing more attention than ever before. They decide to stop for a meal, and Tisei tells Rudy that the play would add her character to the main story. but she seems discouraged, thinking things didn't go as planned, and Tisei is surprised to see this side of her. But Rudy tells herself that the day isn't over yet. Rudy looks at Tisei and wonders if something is bothering her, so she explains that she's worried because Rudy has been acting strange. She admits that she noticed Tisei was troubled, so she wanted to distract her, but nothing went as planned. She thinks Rudy is so strong that she can't foresee how her deeds draw attention. Tisei tells Rudy she's kind, but she seems frustrated that Tisei always cleans up her mess and she can't stay low profile. But Tisei says she has gotten better. Tisei is grateful for her concern and knows everything will be over by morning. Lubo's men write a report after investigating the airship, but Keegith orders them to remove Tisei from it, but when they refuse, he kills them because resolving things with Tisei is more important to him than the orders from the church. He sends a different report to Lubo, and he continues to wait for Tisei. Tisei invades the airship and finds Keegith waiting for her. He admires her thirst for blood and invites her to be his right hand. She inquires about his allies, but he mentions that they're dead, removing Tisei's doubts about killing him. He thinks that she lacks a killer's thirst, so he declares that he'll teach her what it truly means to be an assassin. Keegith charges at her, pushing her away, but she uses her spider's web to counterattack and injures his eye. However, he seems fine and starts using explosives. He knows she would protect the airship, using it to his advantage. She recalls that he's also there for the airship, and she can't believe he'd resort to this method, as their master forbade using explosives to avoid killing innocents. But he doesn't care, and throws more explosives at the airship. He detonates them, but a couple of them get too close. She's covered in injuries, unable to understand why someone who used to be faithful to their assassin's blessing turned out this way. He throws more explosives to finish her, but a gust of wind stops them and she attacks him from behind. He begs for his life, revealing he was working under Lubo's orders, but she notes that he broke an assassin's most important rule by revealing his client's name and considers him a disgrace. He dies before drinking his potion, while Tisei thinks he had lost his will. After she handles everything, Rudy appears, and we learn she was the one who helped. Tisei explains that Keegith was a deserter, and as they head home, she shares that the Assassin's Guild was created so that those with the Assassin's blessing had a place to belong and isn't as authoritarian as people think. They're free to refuse missions they don't want, and there's a rule about not accepting unreasonable missions, so in the end, they're just doing everything to survive. Rudy wonders if she didn't tell her about it to avoid involving her, and Tisei explains that she's afraid she won't be able to stay by Rudy's side because she wants to live a peaceful life, and Tisei can't stop being an assassin, but Rudy declares that she would be her friend regardless. We see Lubo annoyed because Keegith didn't provide the exact location of the airship in his report, but decides to go to Zoltan with Van to check it out himself. Van's group is injured, but he wants to leave them behind, only caring about getting stronger. He explains that any sacrifice is justified to develop the hero's blessing, and Esta seems to dislike this, but they're interrupted by Lubo's signal to return. That evening, Tisei and Rudy visit Red, and Tisei warns that Lubo is searching for the airship. The following morning, Red is reading a newspaper and discovers that a knight named Esta has defeated the Demon Lord's general. Ritz wonders if he will give the airship to the church, and he believes they will make better use of it and can stop them if they misuse it. The priority is to ensure they don't find Rudy, and he goes to her farm, happy that the mold is gone. Noticing the herbs are growing well, he decides to buy the first batch for his store and thinks they can sell the rest to the Merchants Guild. Rudy asks for help, and Red agrees since he's a member of the Merchants Guild, and he considers himself her mentor for living a peaceful life. Danon is training outside, and Red greets him. He wants them to massacre the Demon King's army, but Red prefers life in Zoltan with Ritz. He suggests drinking together, but Danon wants to do something first and asks Red to spar with him. Later on, Ritz thinks it doesn't seem like a good idea, but Red explains that Danon insisted. Ritz wonders if he can win, but he believes he has no chance because Danon is the superior fighter, while he only has common skills as a guide. She can't believe he'll go through with it, but wants him to fight her too, which leaves him shocked. Ritz thinks it's okay if he uses the merciful spell, and Red knows it won't scar or injure her, but he doesn't want her to feel pain. We see Red training for his spar with Danon, but he feels rusty and fears disappointing him. Ritz appears, and they see Yara approaching them. She heard about the fight with Danon, and she wants to train him since she's perfect for retraining his combat skills. Ritz is confused since she's a spirit mage, but she explains she's also the founder of the Lotus-style staff technique. Ritz can't believe this since it's a well-known technique, and Red mentions she also compiled the famous war strategy book. Yara thinks Red needs to sharpen his mind, saying it won't be easy to regain his past skills, but his mind must have a different kind of strength than before. Red agrees, so he decides that he should train his new strengths as Red instead of Gideon. Yara thinks they should go to a training field, and Danon suddenly appears, mentioning that the training field is the supreme form of recreation, so he also wants to join them, and soon they settle their camps by the river. They decide to eat, and they share their food with Danon. He realizes it's been a while since the heroes group gathered like this, and the only ones missing are Ares and Theodora. He wonders if Red heard about the mercenary who defeated the Demon Lord's general, and Red recalls that his name is Esta. Danon thinks it's Theodora, because she's the only knight who can defeat a general, while Red believes her right-hand man is Albert, because of his prosthetic arm. Danon recalls how he failed to thank Albert for saving him, and he plans to find Theodora after leaving Zoltan, wanting to join her. He ends up arguing with Yara over the last piece of meat, but Rudy interrupts them and eats the steak. We see Red and Danon training, while Yara wonders if they should also train, and Ritz agrees to join, but Rudy has other plans. The four continue to train, and Rudy is seen under a waterfall as Tisei watches her. When they finish, Rudy thinks it wasn't what she imagined. Red and Danon drink together, and Danon thinks Red is quite adaptable, since he can tell which enemy Red imagines he's fighting by his swordplay, and he seems to be cutting a different foe each time, so he thinks sparring with him will be fun, and Red thinks the same. The group rests at night, and Red is taking a bath when Ritz appears and offers to scrub his back. Red mentions how strong Danon is, and training with him made him realize this, thinking he's the strongest human after Rudy. He thinks that sparring with him isn't a sport nor a fight to the death, but has its own purpose, because he wants to show his new lifestyle through his fight. The next day, Yara uses the merciful spell on them as they prepare for battle. The fight begins, and Red manages to keep up with Danon's movements, dodging all of his attacks, and neither of them can hit each other. Danon manages to disarm Red, but he quickly redirects his attack away. Danon notices that Red's sword is nothing special, thinking he should be stronger, but Red managed to predict all of his attacks. He returns the sword to Red, who wonders if he has figured out how to win, and Danon thinks he needs to change his fighting style, so that Red won't be able to predict his moves. Red wonders if Danon will hold back, but he doesn't plan to, wanting to fight Red with everything he has. They continue to exchange blows, and Red ends up losing the battle, thankful for Yara's merciful spell. He hopes he didn't disappoint, and Danon mentions that he had fun. He explains that he doesn't understand anything about a calm life, which is why he wanted to fight Red, and he wonders if Danon found his answer, but he declares that he didn't learn a thing. However, he saw that Red's sword style has an underlying strength, realizing he's still the strong man he respects, and perhaps the slow life is a different form of strength. They respect each other, and Rudy mentions that it's her turn to spar with Danon, so he gets excited to fight the hero, but she defeats him with just one attack. The group returns home, and Albert is waiting for them. Red inquires about Theodora, but Albert mentions that he came alone, saying she now goes by Esta. Albert reveals that Van has appeared as the new hero, and he's heading towards Zoltan for the airship. We see Van and Lavender in a tavern, and two people start fighting, with one of them getting killed. The killer explains that he did this to keep his blessing under control, but Van cuts his head off. Esta arrives, wondering what happened, and Van says he killed an assassin. She wants more explanations, but he doesn't see the importance, saying he didn't find it necessary to capture the assassin because he had a wrongdoer blessing. He explains that he killed the man because people with the wrongdoer blessings exist to be taken down by someone, so the only thing he did was fulfill his role, and he prays for the man's sacrifice. Lubo thinks these are the words of a true hero, but Van thinks that he isn't the hero yet because he hasn't fought the Demon Lord, thinking Rudy must have had a deeper faith than him. We see Red and the others with Albert, as he explains that Van was recognized as the hero by the church, and Lubo is in charge of him. Yara wonders if the church knew about Van before, but Rudy explains that two heroes existing at the same time is unusual, so the church would have done something if they knew about this. Danon thinks there's no need to think about it, and the real problem is Van coming to Zoltan. Yara wonders how much the church knows about Rudy, but Albert says they know nothing about her campaign, and Red explains that it's because they kept it a secret. Thanks to Rudy and Theodora, 3 generals of the demon army were defeated, and Avalon is now at peace, so Rudy's disappearance won't cause any problems. But he doesn't know what might happen if Van finds out she escaped the battle, so they should avoid running into him. Yara suggests that they should go on vacation, while Van is on Zoltan looking for the airship. Tisei suggests visiting attractions, and offers to take care of Rudy's farm while they're gone. Yara says she can help with the shop, and Danon decides to stay in case something happens. Red is worried that he might meet Lubo, but he explains that he can use his lost arm and pretend that he was banished from the party because of it. We see the trio visiting St. Durant village, and Red explains that it was named after the village's hero, a lumberjack who built hundreds of houses in one night after an attack by giants. They arrive at the village and see the statue of St. Durant, realizing that he looks like an absolute unit. They decide to see the village, stopping by a shop and buying candles before finding a place to stay. Tisei thinks they must have arrived, and thinks about taking a vacation after everything is over. They light up the candle they bought, and they're amazed by it, thinking the others would like it, so they decide to buy more on the way back. The church bell rings, and they think about Van. Ritz hopes he leaves Zoltan soon, and Rudy explains that the urge of the hero's blessing wouldn't allow him to stay for long, so they should enjoy their vacation. The next day, we see them returning to the cottage, when they find a girl named Kate, realizing she's in pain, so they check on her. She explains that she's fine, but they decide to take her to the cottage. Red discovers that the village doesn't have doctors, so he examines her, wondering if anything strange happened recently. She doesn't remember anything, saying she just cut her leg at work, but Red notices her hands shaking, thinking she must have been poisoned when she cut herself. He reveals that magic helps with the pain, but doesn't get rid of the toxins, so he decides to create medicine for her. But he mentions that it's going to take time, so he asks Rudy and Ritz to help him out. Ritz uses her magic to ease Kate's pain, while Rudy runs to get the herbs needed for the medicine. Red prepares the mixture, and Rudy returns, but he realizes that she's a mess, wondering what happened to her. She tells him that she fell down, and gives him the herbs, but she immediately leaves, saying she needs to find someone. Kate feels better after taking the medicine, and she thanks them for taking care of her, but they're surprised to see a crowd gathering outside. Rudy explains that she got lost, so she asked them for directions, but they decided to tag along. They're grateful that Red took care of Kate, giving him gifts to show their appreciation. That evening, Red prepares the traditional curry with the recipe he received from the villagers, but he wonders why Ritz is wearing a swimsuit. She reminds him that they're on vacation, and he remembers that this is a geothermal region, but he's confused by Rudy's clothes. So she explains that she forgot her swimsuit, but that doesn't explain much to him. They start eating dinner, and they love the spicy curry, but Ritz thinks about how they haven't heard anything from their companions, so Red tells her to trust the others and wait. The next day, Albert is observing Zoltan's surroundings, and Danon brings him food. He's excited to see it, but hesitates when Danon tells him that he made it himself. He takes a bite anyway, and can't believe how good it is. So Danon looks at him, thinking he hasn't made himself clear, but he smiles, thanking Albert for saving his life, so Albert becomes emotional. Van's group finally arrives at Zoltan, and Tisei is watching him, thinking he's nothing like Rudy. They go to church, and Van wonders why their guide hasn't arrived. Lubo thinks he was killed, and Theodora remembers that he was the only one who knew the location of the airship. Van suggests looking on their own, but Lubo thinks they should rest, because the day is about to end. We return to Red's group, as they play board games together. Tisei's spider appears with a letter, which mentions that Van has arrived in Zoltan, but he isn't causing problems. Van and the others are at the party, celebrating their arrival, and we see Tisei disguised as a maid. The mayor arrives to greet Van, but he completely ignores the mayor, so Theodora explains that he's tired, and the mayor agrees to come back later. Theodora tells Van that she doesn't approve of his behavior, and when a maid arrives to serve him food, he becomes angry, saying the hero doesn't need food. Everyone is shocked to see this, so Theodora takes Van outside to talk. She asks Van to hide his displeasure, and he's actually happy to hear it, since it's great to learn from someone experienced with a high-level blessing like Theodora. She thinks he never learns anything, and explains he should show respect for the people who want to celebrate his arrival. But he doesn't understand, thinking there's no need to celebrate, because the hero is only saving people for Lord Demis. Theodora explains that people see the hero as a symbol of courage, saying it's important to understand them, because he'll be leading them into battle. Van agrees, knowing it's a hero's duty to give people the courage to fight, but he reveals that he wants them to die in combat. Theodora is confused, but he mentions that the only thing that matters is the faith in Demis, thinking dying in combat is the ultimate expression of faith. Lavender praises Van, while Lubo arrives to discuss the plan, saying they will leave town the next day. He explains that the search for the airship will be carried out by the people of Zoltan, while they hunt down a salt dragon. Van is excited, thinking a dragon is the perfect enemy for a hero. Theodora wonders if it's necessary, because a salt dragon won't attack if they keep their distance. But Lubo wants to use the dragon to increase Van's blessing, saying the dragon may have a treasure from the Fairy King. Theodora is against this, but Van thinks it's okay, saying the scriptures mention that killing monsters is righteous. Theodora explains that he'd regret making too many enemies, but Van declares that it's the hero's job to eradicate evil. Tisei watches them, and Lavender almost sees her, but she thinks she's just imagining things. The next day, the group begins a battle against the Salt Dragon. Theodora and Lubo attack first, and they create an opening for Van to slay the dragon, allowing them to acquire the Fairy King's shield. Meanwhile, Ritz wonders what's happening on Zoltan, so Red informs her that they'll receive a letter when the airship is found. He notices Rudy looking at the flowers, wondering if bees carry pollen for them because they can't move. Red explains that the bees are doing this for themselves, but it helps the flowers bloom, and Rudy finds this amazing. They hear kids playing, so they decide to check it out. They realize that the kids are training, and Ritz mentions that even children need to increase their blessings. They recognize Red for saving Kate, thinking he's a great man, and Ritz tells them that she can supervise their training. She corrects their posture, and Red notices that one of the kids has mastered the basics, so Red advises him to train with his blessing in mind. Red thinks he has the gladiator's blessing, telling him that he has great potential. He starts asking for advice, and the other kids also want to learn from Red. But a villager suddenly arrives, saying an ogre king was spotted near the village, so they must protect themselves. He explains that they'll go out on patrol, and asks Red to stay inside the cottage until it's safe, but Red wonders if the villager needs help, saying he knows how to fight, and Rudy demonstrates her skills, slicing the leaves as they fall. The villager is surprised, realizing that they're incredibly skilled. So he allows them to patrol the area, but they can't find signs of the Ogre King, and Red apologizes for dragging them in. But Ritz knows he did it for the kids, and tells him that she'd like to walk with her own kids in the future. Red is happy, and Rudy likes the idea of hanging out with Red's family. They notice that the grass has been crumpled, so they realize that the Ogre King is trying to avoid leaving footprints. But Ritz finds this strange, because Ogre Kings usually lack intelligence. They tell the villagers that there are 30 Ogre Kings, and they appear to be scouting the area. The villagers are surprised, knowing they don't usually scout in groups, so Ritz mentions that they appear to be different. Red decides to get rid of them, asking the villagers to go to a safe place, as Rudy assures them that she'll be protecting them. They gather at the church, and the kids notice how strong Rudy is, so they ask about her blessing. She decides not to tell them, but explains that her blessing has nothing to do with it, saying she's protecting them because she wants to. We see Tisei visiting Yara in the apothecary, telling her that the new hero isn't like Rudy, because his blessing doesn't seem to suppress his emotions, so Tisei wonders if handing over the airship is a good idea. She decides to keep an eye on Van, so Yara asks her to be careful, and Tisei wonders if she's having difficulties with the apothecary. So she reveals that the plants are acting strange since Van arrived, saying they appear to be afraid that a disaster is approaching. We see Van and Theodora walking around the city, and a crowd gathers to watch the hero. Lavender questions why they're doing tourism, so Van explains that he has to act according to the will of Demis. She wonders what Demis wants, but Van explains that he's still trying to find out. A boy clings to Van, and Tanta asks him to not bother the hero, but Van is kind to him, and the other children also want to talk to Van. They're the kids who live at the church, and Tanta wonders if Van can make time for them. Van doesn't mind, surprising Theodora, and he follows the kids to the church. The priest reveals that he and Mistrum are supporting the kids, and Van mentions that he wants to help them. He leaves with the kids, and Mistrum realizes that she hasn't seen them so happy in a while, thinking Van is a good person. But Theodora apologizes for what happened at the welcoming party, saying Van is an innocent boy, and this has made him blind to people, but Mistrum thinks that he's kind to children. The children ask Van about his journey, and he tells them that he recently defeated an evil dragon. They're impressed, asking him if he was afraid, but Van explains that a hero fears nothing, and it's his job to fight for the people. They want to join him in his journey, so Van wonders if they have awakened their blessings, but they fall silent. So Van warns them that they shouldn't decide how to live their lives until they know what blessing they have, but they mention that Tanta decided to be a carpenter. Van explains that Demis is going to decide their future, but Tanta says that he wants to be a carpenter no matter what blessing he receives, because he wants to bring joy to everyone by building houses. But Van thinks he's wrong, saying true joy is only obtained by living in accordance with one's own blessing, and Van realizes that he needs to change the mindset of the people in Zoltan. Meanwhile, Red and Ritz search for the Ogre Kings, and Red thinks they need to be dealt with before the hero comes to the village. An Ogre King suddenly attacks them, but Red easily defeats him, and he notices that the Ogre King has a weapon, thinking this is unusual. More Ogre Kings appear, and they start attacking Red. One of them uses martial arts, and he follows up with magic, but Red slices through his spell. Red and Ritz are able to defeat the Ogre Kings, realizing that they have multiple blessings, and they were using pieces of ancient elven ruins as weapons. Red finds ancient elven scriptures on their bodies, so Ritz remembers that the gem beast also had multiple blessings, and Red thinks it may be linked to the ancient elves. We return to Van, as he says goodbye to the children, and Mistrum asks Theodora to guide Van to the right path. Theodora approaches Van, saying she's relieved to see him with the children. He explains that the children have not awakened their blessings, so they need to be protected until they understand their roles. Theodora wonders if this is the hero's blessing, or if this is how he feels, but Van clarifies that his feelings are always aligned with his blessing, as that is what makes a hero. Lubo appears, saying he knows where they should go, and reveals that Tisei will guide them, but Lavender realizes that she's the person from the other night. Tisei explains that she was working a second job, but Lavender doesn't believe her. So she explains that she's saving up to go to a hot spring, and she manages to convince Lavender that she's telling the truth. We see that the villagers gave Red curry, but Ritz wants to take a bath before dinner. He says that he'll get the bath ready, but Rudy decides to do it for him, because she wants to do something to thank him for his hard work. She also wants to do something for Ritz, so she suggests taking a shower together. Rudy washes Ritz's back, and Ritz explains that she can handle the front. Rudy congratulates her on her engagement, and tells her that Red never had peace during their travels, but he's happy to be with her. Rudy mentions that she will also be happy when Ritz marries Red, so she hugs Rudy, saying she will stay by her side. Moments later, they receive a letter from Tisei, which mentions that Van is leaving Zoltan to defeat Dantak, the hill giant, and she'll be accompanying him as a guide. Red worries about Tisei, so Rudy tells her spider to come to her if Tisei is in trouble, because she won't let anyone harm her best friend. Van fights the giants, and Dantak wonders why he's doing this. So he explains that it's because of the laziness, saying they're going against Demis' teachings by not killing humans. He charges in, killing Dantak in a single blow, but Tisei thinks he's crazy. Theodora is cooking when Tisei appears, so Theodora invites her to have dinner, explaining that Van and Lavender are out hunting monsters, while Lubo is sleeping. Tisei sits next to her, and Theodora removes her mask, as she recalls that they used to be around the fire all the time, but Tisei is surprised that she can cook. So she reveals that she learned the cooking skill, and Tisei wonders if she's following in Red's footsteps. Theodora confirms this, saying she also wants to guide the hero. Tisei tells her that Albert was worried about her, thinking he's happy to work with her, and she's surprised to hear this. Tisei thinks he misses Theodora, and she blushes when she hears this, saying she also misses him, but mentions that she only said that as a friend. She becomes nervous, and makes up an excuse to stay alone, so Tisei thinks she's in love. Red and the others are eating curry buns in the city, when they notice a group of horses flying by. Ritz thinks they seem to be running away from something, and Rudy suddenly senses something approaching. Van is looking at the Fairy King's shield, and Theodora tells him that it allows him to use mind control magic. She tells him that it's dangerous, but he thinks it depends on how it's used, saying it can guide evildoers onto a path of faith. Theodora argues that forcing someone to pray doesn't make them a believer, thinking they shouldn't use the shield. But Lavender reminds her that the shield belongs to Van, so he gets to decide how to use it. The people of Zoltan prepare a party to celebrate the delivery of the airship to the hero, but Mistram has a bad feeling about it. The mayor guarantees that there won't be any problems this time, because the hero wants the airship. Van arrives, and they inform him that they finally found the airship, asking him to make a toast. But Van thinks the party is unnecessary, and Theodora explains that the hero needs to refrain, because he has other commitments. The mayor apologizes for not taking the hero's duties into account, and prays that the hero finds success in his travels, but Van tells him that prayers from heretics won't reach the ears of the Almighty. Everyone is surprised, so Lubo thinks this is inappropriate, and asks Van to apologize. But Van doesn't think he needs to, because as a hero, one of his tasks is to guide the heretics to the right path. Gallatin warns him that he's being insulting, and the priest wonders what makes Van think they're heretics. He explains that they're living useless lives, and as the scriptures mention, laziness is a mortal sin, and goes against the teachings of the Almighty. He explains that they need to repent and change, so he calls them to join him in fighting the Demon Lord's army, and declares that it's their sacred duty to fight alongside the hero. The mayor tells him that they also have their land and lives to consider, but Van mentions that they must leave everything aside, because this remote land is worthless. Tisei sends her spider to Red, and the mayor tells Van that it's rude to insult the land that his grandparents risked their lives to develop. But Van explains that etiquette is norms by men, while he's talking about the divine. He finds the conversation ridiculous, and decides to use the power of the Fairy King's shield. Theodora and Mistram try to stop him, but Lavender doesn't let them get in his way. Theodora explains that what Van wants to do isn't heroic, but Lavender claims that everything Van does is right in her eyes. She uses magic, and Mistram wonders what that energy is. Theodora asks Lubo to do something, but he thinks failing will also help Van learn, and the death of a few Hicks won't hurt the hero's reputation. Lavender tells Tisei that if she tries anything, she will kill her, and Van uses the Fairy King's shield to control everyone's minds to the right path, but is stopped by Yara's roots. Van wonders who she is, and she wonders what kind of hero uses mind control magic, calling him a villain. Van declares that she has no right to lecture him about right and wrong as he breaks the roots, and he starts attacking her. Yara does the best she can, but she's no match for him. Theodora and Mistram try to save her, but Lavender traps them inside her magic. Van is ready to cut Yara, but Danon saves her by kicking him with all his strength. They wonder why Van isn't healing, and he says he won't lose to evil, as Danon realizes that faith in his blessing keeps him standing. The two collide, but Van manages to defend his attack, and Yara joins in, hitting him in the eye. Danon hits him with one of his moves, but Van reflects the damage back to him with his regenerative hands. Yara heals Danon, and Van claims that with this ability, he can reverse any situation. Danon thinks that a hero shouldn't pass on his pain to others, and salt dragons suddenly appear to attack Van for stealing his treasure. A dragon launches an attack, and Yara tries to defend the city, but her powers aren't strong enough. Danon thinks that the city will be destroyed at this rate, and Van tries to fight them, but Danon thinks he should focus on saving people if he's the hero. Van thinks this is the Almighty's wish, because if this place is destroyed by dragons, everyone will want to join the war. Danon has had enough, so he attacks Van, but he reflects the damage once again. Van attacks Yara, but Red saves her in time, and he manages to get the Fairy King's shield with the help of Tisei's spider, so he escapes with it. He keeps running, but the salt dragons come after him. Red asks the dragons to listen, but they ignore him when they suddenly feel a thirst for blood approaching them. Red warns them that Van is coming and explains that he wants to return the shield to them, so they accept it and leave. Van attacks Red, but he dodges, telling Van that he has failed as a hero. He tries to attack Red again, but he stops Van's sword, and notes that he has put a lot of effort into leveling up his blessing, but not his swordsmanship. He thinks a human technique doesn't compare to his divine blessing, so Red explains that this arrogance allowed him to be lured away from his group. Van reminds him that it's useless to buy time, because a hero can fight all night, but Red doesn't think it will take that long, and Rudy suddenly punches Van, sending him flying. Red explains they must leave now, because they can't let Van's group see her face. We see Van bleeding, wondering if he's going to die. He notes that the hero has been defeated, but there's nothing wrong with that, as his job is to fight evil, not win. Lavender arrives, and she's worried about his condition. Lubo tells her to cast a regeneration spell, and Van uses his healing hands. Lavender is relieved to see that he's okay, and Van seems to have a revelation. He thinks that killing Riddy is part of his role now, thinking he will become the true hero if he achieves this. We see Van fighting a monster, determined to become stronger, because he wants to defeat Riddy, thinking he will become the true hero after he defeats her. We return to Red's group, as Albert mentions that Van is obsessed with killing Riddy. Danon thinks they need to take him on, but Yara is against this, thinking they need to find a peaceful way to resolve the conflict. Red shows them illustrations of Van's party members, and Albert reveals that Van is the 8th prince of the Flamberg Kingdom. But he was raised in a monastery, because his parents didn't want to take care of him. Tisei realizes that his faith was nurtured in the monastery, and we learn that after the church recognized him as the hero, he started slaughtering monsters to raise the level of his blessing. Yara wonders why his companions always end up dying, and Red thinks that he doesn't value the lives of others, because he's too focused on developing his blessing. Rudy explains that he was never exposed to people, so he values God more than anything else, and this explains why he behaves like a psychopath. Ritz reveals that Mistram knows about Lavender's true nature, revealing that she isn't actually a fairy, but a magical creature shrouded in darkness. Mistram sees her as a threat, asking Ritz and Yara to deal with her, but Yara thinks fighting her is too risky, thinking they should negotiate with her instead. Ritz volunteers to do it, thinking Lavender will be able to relate with her, because they're both in love. Red tells Danon to join her, while he negotiates with Lubo, and Albert explains that Lubo was born as a commoner, but he was able to make a fortune through his illegal behavior. Tisei is worried, because he already knows about Red, but he explains that he's going to wear a disguise, saying they need to protect Riddy and Zoltan at all costs. Later that day, Red approaches Tisei, who wonders what she can do to help against Van, because she sees him as a threat. She wonders why Van and Riddy are so different, and Red explains that it's because of the way they fight, saying Van goes into battle thinking he's invincible, while Riddy is focused on defeating her opponents. Red thinks Van is too reckless, because he's relying on the power of his blessing, and Tisei agrees with Red, thinking this is Van's weakness. She thinks that Riddy is different because of Red's guidance, so she's glad that he was there for Riddy, because she could have ended up like Van. Meanwhile, Van's party is walking around Zoltan, looking for information about Riddy. But Theodora approaches Lubo, thinking they should stop searching for her, but he tells Theodora to continue gathering information. Gallatin hears about this, and the mayor wonders what they should do, so Mistram suggests leaving it to Red, thinking they shouldn't cause a commotion. Albert approaches Van, as Theodora introduces him as her squire. He asks Van about his journey, so he tells Albert that he's been slaughtering monsters, but Lavender reminds him that he needs to defeat Riddy. So he recalls how she defeated him, thinking he needs to find her, but Lubo tells him to rest, saying they will continue searching for her. Van rests in his room, but Lavender senses a presence, realizing that they're being watched. We see Ritz and Danon, as Lavender approaches them, threatening to destroy them, but Ritz explains that she knows about Lavender's true nature, asking her why she's pretending to be a fairy. Ritz thinks it's because she's in love with Van, and she threatens to kill Ritz, but she explains that she understands how Lavender feels, because she's also in love. So Lavender decides to talk to her, and they have a drink together, as Ritz thinks about exposing their common interests. She introduces herself, and tells Lavender about her life with Red, saying she's willing to sacrifice everything to be with him. They start talking about love, as Lavender explains that it's a beautiful experience, saying she doesn't want anything to change. Ritz asks her about Van, and she explains that she doesn't want him to change, so Ritz becomes sad, realizing that Lavender's love is one-sided. She mentions that she's willing to destroy the world for love, saying Van has countless enemies, and she isn't sure if he's going to win against them, but she's willing to die with him. Ritz finds her strange, and they realize that their principles are different. Ritz asks for a favor, telling Lavender to convince Van to stay away from Zoltan because he's going to get into trouble. But she refuses, and Ritz decides to respect her decision as they continue drinking together. We see Lubo gambling as he watches a race, but he ends up losing, causing him to become frustrated. Red wears a disguise, and he approaches Lubo, saying he has information for him. Red tells him to place a bet on number 5, but Lubo thinks he's going to lose because the racer is overweight. But Red tells him that he's willing to bet 2 gold coins, so he decides to do it, but Yara wonders if Red is going to be okay, because Lubo won't talk to him if number 5 loses. But he reveals that he has a plan, and we see that Tisei's spider is there to help. After the race, we see that Lubo won the bet, saying he's surprised with the result. Red takes him to a restaurant, where we see Yara serving the drinks, and he's impressed by the quality of the wine. Yara tells him to try their food, and he finds it strange, but as he tastes it, he realizes that it's extremely delicious. He consumes all of it, and Red explains that he wants to talk about Van, saying he knows about Rudy. Lubo is surprised to hear this, and Red claims that Rudy is a guardian of the ancient elves, but Lubo finds this ridiculous, saying the guardian can't be human. So Red shows him the remains of an ogre king, revealing that the ancient elves created it, as he explains that they're capable of producing biological weapons. He claims that Rudy is protecting the ancient elf ruins near Zoltan, and Lubo believes him, thinking this explains how she was able to overpower Van. Red explains that Rudy is defending Zoltan from the Demon King's army, thinking Van should leave, because Zoltan will lose its protector if he kills her. So Lubo decides to listen to Red, but he's worried that Van won't follow his orders, because he's become obsessed with killing Rudy. Van's group believes that Theodora is a traitor, so they decide to go to Ritz, and Lavender asks her about Theodora. But she just tells them to calm down, and Lavender thinks she's covering for Theodora, since she always knows everything. Meanwhile, Danon wonders if their plan will actually work, but Red thinks it's a good idea, saying it's worth a try. Lubo wants to return to the inn, but Lavender refuses, so Ritz suggests they talk inside. They sit with Theodora and the others, and Lavender calls her a traitor, but Theodora is offended by the accusation. She explains that she was ordered to investigate Van's enemy, saying Ritz is an experienced adventurer who lives in Zoltan, so she approached her to gather information. Ritz tells Lavender that she's ready to introduce her boyfriend, but Van is in shock seeing Red, recognizing him as the man who stole his shield. Van knows that they're the members of another hero's party, but he wonders what they're doing in Zoltan, so Danon explains that he was injured in battle. Theodora reveals that her goal is to gather information from them, saying they fought against the Demon Lord's army. Van believes her, but he wants to know why they attacked him, so Red explains that he was just defending the people of Zoltan, saying Van was trying to hurt them. But he thinks he was saving them from doubt, so that they can live a life guided by their blessings. Red reminds him that he tried to control people and made dragons attack the city, saying he wasn't acting like a true hero. But Van thinks he did the right thing, because he was only doing what his blessing told him to do. Red wants to talk to him, revealing that he's Rudy's guide, and Van is impressed to hear this. But Red explains that he has already fulfilled his purpose, and Van is shocked, thinking he no longer has a reason to live, but he disagrees, saying he's still enjoying his life. Lavender asks him to stop confusing Van, and mentions that she won't let anyone get in the way of her love. So Ritz talks about love, saying she's happy to be with Red, but this makes the others uncomfortable. So Theodora suggests ending the meeting, and Lubo agrees, saying they should talk another day. After the meeting, Tisei wonders if it's okay to let them go, but Red thinks they shouldn't insist while Van's party is confused. He reminds her that their goal is to change Van's ideals, so they need to find a solution that he accepts. Tisei wonders if their plan is going to work, and Red admits he doesn't know, but he thinks Van will listen to him because he has the blessing of the guide. He believes the best approach is to talk with caution, but he wonders if they have time, thinking Van doesn't take long to make decisions. Red visits Rudy, but he tells her that he's going to stop going to her house because Lavender is good at spotting people and he doesn't want her to find Rudy. She understands, but he notices her becoming sad as she wonders if God will let her have a normal life. Red believes that God wants to use Van to defeat her because she has abandoned her role as the hero. But he decides to stop the two of them from fighting so that they can ruin God's plan, and Rudy thinks he's amazing. There's a knock at the door, and Megria appears, saying someone accepted the herb collection request. Rudy thinks she'll be able to create more medicinal herbs, and Red thinks Megria passed at the right time because he wants to see if she has any interesting requests. So she explains that monsters have been spotted nearby, and he asks for the details. Later that day, Red tells the others that he accepted the request. So Ritz looks at the poster, and she realizes that they need to defeat rare monsters known as sea bogies. Yara hates these monsters, but Ritz thinks everyone does, because they release an annoying aura that is difficult to deal with. Red thinks the worst part is that they eat children, and Danon decides to join them. Red wants to resolve this quickly, but Ritz asks him about Van, so he mentions that he wants to take him along, and everyone is surprised to hear this. Tisei reminds him that Van doesn't care about people, so he could cause trouble for Red. But Ritz thinks about it, and realizes it might be a good opportunity for Lavender to get to know them, and Red also wants to learn more about her. Danon thinks this is a great idea, so he decides to join Red and Ritz, but Red refuses, saying they don't need him, and Danon can't believe the betrayal. The next day, Van decides to join Red, explaining that the hero's duty is to end evil. They arrive at a beach, and Red asks them to prepare for battle, but Van tells him that the hero is always ready. Red realizes that fighting is a part of his life, but he thinks this is normal, saying people can't avoid battles as long as blessings exist. Red explains that he and Van will take point, while Ritz and Lavender cover them with magic, but Lavender doesn't want to take orders from him. They see the monsters, and Red asks Van to be careful, but Van wonders why he's using a bronze sword. So he explains that he doesn't need a good weapon, because he's no longer fighting to save the world, but Van doesn't understand why he would use an inferior sword. The sea bogies notice them, so they start fighting, and they follow Red's plan, but a monster catches Van, so Red becomes worried. But he manages to get out, and Red wonders if he's okay, saying he shouldn't fight without defending himself. But he explains that his way is faster, thinking the hero needs to fight aggressively, but Red explains that it's smarter to adapt to the enemy. They're able to defeat the monsters, and Red asks Van how many of them he killed. He thinks a hero doesn't need to keep count, but Red tells him that he killed more than Van, reminding him that he's the hero, so he needs to do better in combat. He thinks this doesn't matter, but Red explains that the guide's blessing shows the hero the way. He mentions that the hero is supposed to be the strongest, so Van can't be considered as a true hero unless he surpasses Red. Van realizes that he must be right, but Lavender becomes angry, telling Van that he doesn't need to improve, and Red realizes that she's a terrible partner. Ritz sees footprints, realizing that the monsters have been traveling to the village, so they must have kidnapped a child. Van decides to take action, but Red wonders if he knows how to track footprints, and he reveals that he doesn't, because he's been focusing on combat skills. Lavender tells Red to stop picking on Van, saying he doesn't need a tracking skill, because her ability can track anyone the wind catches. They enter a cave, and they see the monsters, but find no sign of the child. Van suddenly charges in, and takes down a monster, so Red rushes to protect him, killing the monster behind him. They decide to split up, and they continue searching for the child. Van finally finds a girl, and he tells her that the hero has arrived to save her, so she becomes overjoyed. She returns to her parents, and they thank Van for saving their daughter's life, but he tells them that there's no need to thank him, because he was just doing his job. That evening, Theodora is frustrated that Van listened to Red, thinking she must be doing a terrible job as his guide, and she's also impressed that Ritz can talk to Lavender. Ritz explains that they have something in common, but Theodora thinks she doesn't know how to do anything right, so she loses confidence. But Albert encourages her, saying she led them to Red, and she cheers up, as Albert continues to praise her, so she blushes. Red thinks they're a good pair, but Theodora asks him not to talk nonsense, and Albert thinks he isn't good enough to be her partner, saying he will do his best. Meanwhile, we see Van thinking about everything that happened, and he thinks the hero should never doubt himself. Lubo presents a report to Van, and explains that Rudy is a humanoid weapon, saying she isn't a threat, so they need to leave Zoltan. But Van refuses, explaining that his blessing is telling him to stay, so Lubo respects his decision. But as Lubo leaves the room, we learn that Van can no longer hear his blessing's impulses, and he just decided to stay because he thinks he's being tested by Demis. Theodora is with the others, and Red asks how Van is, but she thinks he's been acting odd after he rescued the child, revealing that he's been praying all day. Tisei shows up, and talks about a request to look for a missing child. Albert thinks he can handle it, saying he wants to help the region, and he explains that he's happy traveling with Theodora, so he wants to act in a way that makes her proud. Theodora blushes, and Tisei gives him the details of the request. Lubo is at the inn, asking for more drinks, when Theodora shows up, asking him about Van, so Lubo explains that he went to look for the missing child with Lavender. Lubo reveals that Van has been ignoring him, saying he's concerned, but he thinks Van can still be fixed. Albert kills an ogre, but he's surprised to find it in the forest. He looks for the missing child, while a creature watches him, and it attacks him, but Albert accidentally knocks it out, and we learn that it's a fairy dragon. A girl appears, begging Albert to spare the dragon's life, and he explains that he's looking for her, because her parents are worried after she disappeared. She explains that she was playing when the ogre appeared, but the dragon protected her, and it tells them that there's a scarier one nearby, saying the fairies are afraid of it. Van suddenly appears with Lavender, and Albert feels an oppressive aura, realizing that it's coming from Van. Albert explains that he's taking the girl home, and Van is glad the child is safe, but he wants to deal with the evil creature that lured the girl into the forest. So Albert explains that the dragon is just a fairy like Lavender, but she asks him not to use her as an excuse, and Van tells him to move if he doesn't want to die. Albert asks the girl to escape, so she runs away, and Van wonders if Albert thinks he can defeat him. Albert doesn't think so, and even admits he's trembling, but he doesn't want Van to take an innocent life. Van charges in, cutting him down, and he collapses, as Van asks Lavender to track the girl. But Albert grabs him, and Van wonders why he's wasting his life for a mere fairy, so Albert explains that he's from the heroes group, thinking it's his duty to fight for what's right. This angers Van, who tells him to let go, but he refuses, so Van's rage takes over, saying he's the hero, as he kicks Albert away. Something hits Van, and he's suddenly attacked by Theodora, who knocks him down and breaks his armor. She heals Albert, thinking he fought like a champion, so she's proud of him, but Van explains he protected the evil creature. So Theodora becomes enraged, and she gives him a beating, but he wonders why she's doing this, and a voice suggests that he made a serious mistake. Lavender attacks Theodora, but she manages to block it, asking Lavender if she's going to let Van see her true self. So Lavender becomes upset, and she prepares to attack, but a water archfairy appears, telling her to stop. So she becomes annoyed, thinking the fairy is too weak to defeat her, and the fairy tells her that Van is about to see her true colors. Lavender prepares to attack, but she's suddenly hit by a branch, and it destroys her body. So Van catches her, and he realizes that Rudy attacked her. She asks for help, so he uses his healing hands, realizing that Rudy is within his reach. The dragon wonders if Albert will be okay, and Red explains that his wounds are healed, but he'll need to rest for a while. Red thinks they're lucky that Rudy found them, and she explains that she felt something in the air, so she decided to investigate. She thinks Van is out of control, revealing that the hero's impulses don't allow fighting with anger, so his confusion must be suppressing the impulses of his blessing. Red thinks it's his fault, since he was the one who talked to Van, but Theodora thinks she has failed as Van's companion, because she couldn't change him. She goes out to calm down, so Red goes to talk to her, and she reveals that it's the first time she fought with anger, because she couldn't stop herself when she saw Albert on the verge of death. She recalls that she tried to kill Red to keep Rudy fighting before, and notices how much she has changed. So she becomes afraid, thinking she might lose herself again, and do something irreversible. He wonders if she wants to suppress her feelings for Albert, and she admits she doesn't. Red thinks this is good, saying her feelings don't come from her blessings, but from her heart. She thinks about the idea of feelings unrelated to her blessings, and thinks he turned her into a terrible woman of faith. Van goes to see Lubo, saying he wants to leave Zoltan, and Lubo is excited to hear this, but Van wants to go to the territory of the Water Archfairy, because he wants to kill her. He also wants to kill Red, thinking he will attract Rudy's attention if he succeeds, and he reveals that he's willing to destroy all of Zoltan to find her. Lubo protests, thinking he should act like a hero, but Van stabs him, and he reveals that he can't feel his blessing, so he doesn't know what to do next, thinking his blessing still wants him to kill Rudy. Red is waiting for Van, and he's sure that Lavender will also appear, but the water archfairy explains that Lavender is stronger than her. So Ritz wonders what Lavender is, and the archfairy reveals that Lavender is an ancient fairy who is capable of mass destruction. In the past, the elves and dragons eliminated her kind, but she was able to survive. Tisei realizes she's a mythical creature, and Yara wonders how they plan to defeat her. Red decides to talk to Van, but Tisei thinks it's impossible since Van is out of control. Red explains that Van is confused, thinking his words should be able to reach him, but he needs to fight Van first. But the others think it's madness, and Red knows he could end up losing, but he promises to win anyway. The archfairy asks Theodora to create a barrier with Yara, while Tisei protects the village, and everyone agrees to her plan, and Rudy gives Red a gift before they fight. Van approaches them, and the girls form the barrier, as Van realizes that Rudy is also a hero, thinking his destiny is to become the new hero by defeating the old one. Red thinks it's an exaggeration, knowing he doesn't know what to do anymore, because he isn't feeling his blessing's impulses. Van explains that it all started with Red, and thinks he's losing himself because of his doubts. Red assures him that everyone feels doubt, but he thinks a hero should never doubt himself. But Rudy explains that she felt doubts on the battlefield, and even regretted the decisions she made after Red left her party. She was distant from the people she should have trusted, but she's happy they're helping her now. Van doesn't believe her, thinking a hero never doubts himself, but Red tells him to stop running from his doubts, saying he needs the courage to face them. So he offers to show the way as the guide, and throws a bronze sword, explaining that a battle between the guide and the hero will clear his doubts. Van agrees, so he drops his sword, but Lavender tells him not to be fooled, and Ritz stops her, explaining that she has no right to interfere. But she's willing to kill anyone who stands in Van's way, and Ritz explains that she won't let anyone interfere with her love, saying she's willing to fight Lavender if she doesn't stand back. Van warns Red that it won't be a friendly battle, and he agrees to fight until one of them falls, so Van becomes happy because he can finally take out his anger on him. He charges at Red, who manages to dodge his moves, and launches a counterattack, injuring his head. Lavender becomes worried, but Ritz reminds her that she isn't going anywhere. So she becomes angry, and she breaks her shell, transforming into an enormous dark figure. Danon launches a barrage of attacks, but he disappears into the mist, and ends up getting electrocuted. Red and Van continue fighting, with Red having the upper hand, and Lavender goes berserk, while Theodora and Yara try to maintain the barrier. Van struggles, and Red manages to break his sword, so he uses his magic, but Red manages to stop him. Lavender tries to attack Red, but is stopped by the sacred shield, as Rudy joins the battle. She jumps to attack Lavender, and she overpowers her, clearing the dark energy from the area. Van creates a powerful tornado to attack Red, breaking his sword, and destroying the barrier. Red appears to be defeated, and Van uses his spell to finish him off. But this was what Red was counting on, and Rudy's brooch begins to glow, before he cuts Van with his bronze sword. Van falls to the ground, and Red claims his victory. But Van doesn't understand what happened, wondering how he used the power of the hero. So he explains that Rudy imbued the brooch with her power before the battle, since even the ultimate ability can be countered with the same type. Van thinks this is cheating, but Red believes he couldn't be more wrong, because it's a battle between men, and it can't be won with blessings alone. Van becomes frustrated, so Red asks him to understand what he's feeling, because it was that emotion that made him waver. Red knows that he felt like he lost after the mission against the Sea Bogies, since he realized he couldn't save the kid alone, so he didn't think he deserved her gratitude. Van cries, while Red understands that he felt disappointed for the first time, and decides to talk to him again after he wakes up. Moments later, Van regains consciousness with Lavender calling his name, but he wonders where he is. Red arrives, and Lavender complains that she can't get close to Van, asking to be released, but Ritz tells her to hold on, since they can't deal with her if she goes berserk again. Red asks Van how he's feeling, and he admits he doesn't feel good, but Red thinks it's normal after losing to someone he didn't want to lose to. Van asks about Albert and Lubo, and Red explains they're fine, but it will take a while for Lubo to get out of bed. Van realizes it's all his fault, and Ritz takes Lavender outside so he can talk with Red. Red asks about his blessing, and Van reveals he's feeling the impulse again, so it seems to be back to normal, and he won't try to hurt anyone. Red frees Van and explains that his emotions and doubts made his blessing go berserk. Van reveals that he never felt disappointed before and wonders if he's not suited to be the hero. But Red doesn't think it's the blessing that makes someone the hero, since a hero is someone who tries to act like one, explaining that a hero listens to advice and continues to persevere despite personal struggles. Van wonders what he should do, and Red explains that he's ignorant about the world, so the lack of perspective makes his sword weak, reminding him that even if he tries to win with brute force, a simple counter knocks him down. Van isn't happy to hear this, but Red thinks he's fine, and explains that he can grow after he changes his ways, saying he can become a true hero. Red asks him to trust Esta and to talk about all sorts of topics with her, but Van wonders if she'll want to travel with him again. Red assures him that as long as he wants to be the hero, she'll accompany him, since she wants to guide the hero. Van wonders if she really is a guide, so Red explains that she doesn't have the blessing, but she has the passion to become one. Van wonders if Red wants to travel with him, but Red is already Rudy's guide, so he has no interest in joining a new hero. Van thinks it's too bad, and wishes he had met Red before his blessing awakened. Red wonders when his blessing changed, and Van asks him how he knows about it. So he explains that Van didn't appear in the fight against the Demon Lord, and was living in the monastery. Van explains that he originally had a cardinal blessing, like Lubo, but it suddenly changed into the hero's blessing. He thinks it's a true miracle bestowed by the god Demis, so he gave up everything to be the hero. Red thinks that must have been hard, and wonders if he's going to leave Zoltan. He confirms this, but thinks it over and decides to talk to his party first. They go outside, and Van thanks Lavender for staying by his side, so she blushes, but thinks it's her pleasure. Later on, Theodora visits Lubo, and he complains about the nurses taking away his alcohol and cigars. Lubo reveals that Van asked for forgiveness and wants him to join the party again, so he accepted, since he needs the hero to fulfill his ambitions with the god Demis. Lubo didn't think Van would apologize, and wonders if it has something to do with her. But she assures him she only heard him out, and it was his idea to apologize, revealing that Van did the same with Albert and the mayor. Lubo wants to add Red to the party, since he changed Van's heart, but knows it won't happen, and he calls her Theodora. She tries to play dumb, but Lubo thinks she's a terrible liar. Van goes to talk to the children at the cathedral, but Tanta doesn't trust him, so he apologizes for before, and a child asks him to play with them. At the apothecary, Lavender doesn't understand why Van keeps apologizing to people and thinks he's becoming someone else. Ritz wonders if she doesn't like him anymore, but Lavender says she loves him and is just nervous about it, so Ritz suggests they drink together. Lavender talks to Red, and she explains she'll never forgive him for hurting Van, throwing something at his head. But Red realizes it's the blue sapphire, and she explains it's a gift for looking after Van. She heard Ritz talking about the gem, revealing that she can get any mineral by asking the fairies. So Red thinks archfairies are amazing, and Lavender jokes that he can worship her at her altar. Red gives the gem to Mogrim, and he decides to work on it immediately. The days pass in Zoltan, and Red prepares a romantic dinner for Ritz. She wonders if it's a special day, so Red gets nervous and shows her the ring. He kneels and proposes to her, confessing his love for her as he recalls everything they've been through together. Ritz accepts and swears all her love to him, so she wears the ring, saying it's like a dream come true. The next day, they have a barbecue with everyone to celebrate. Yara is grateful that Ritz is happy to be with Red, and Theodora is surprised at how much they have changed. But Danon thinks she has changed more, so Albert and Van want to know what she was like in the past, but Theodora gets nervous and tries to change the subject. Tisay and Riddy congratulate the couple, and Riddy thinks she should be next, leaving Tisay in shock. Red looks at Van and thinks about how the path of the hero is full of difficulties, but he knows Van is willing to face them, so he decides to do his part as a guide once more. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.